Welcome back, Loony listeners. You are here for another ISLA RA Books interview, and I am here on the cosmic raft, sailing through the overvoid here. I've got Anubis behind me. Yeah, he doesn't really say much, and we're traversing the cosmos to pick up our special guest. So, if you're keen, have a look at our links. If not, sit back and be surprised. So, strap in, sit back, and get your conchu on. Yes, Loony listeners, welcome back. I'm up here in space. It is quite amazing. I can see, red dwarfs and suns and stars. It's brilliant. Anubis here. He's a bit of a boring character. There's not much to talk to. So I'm on my way actually to pick up our special guest, and our special guest tonight is none other than Scott Weatherly. He is a podcaster running the helm at 20th Century Geek, and we're picking him up now. He actually is also a Beyonder. So Anubis and I think I see in the distance, I think Scott's on his way. There's like a shining light there, and that is Scott. Hey Scott, hi, how are you?
How you doing? You alright? It's a bit creepy around there, isn't it? It's
yes.
I've seen the stuff I've seen around here. It's all a bit Jack Kirby over there, so be careful with that. I'm glad you've brought your chatty pal with you, because
Well, he's
good to have a backseat passenger.
Well, true. He's a bit rubbish, actually. I much prefer to talk to you. Look, I really like your white jumpsuit. That's looking pretty good. I
thought I'd go retro. I thought I'd go a bit Buck Rogers. I'm feeling a bit. I left Tweaky at home, but I thought I'd go a bit Buck Rogers.
And you've been on Battle World and such, doing your Secret Warsy sorts of things.
That's it. I've been trying all kinds of things. I've had a symbiont. I've tried. I've been taking on different dimensions. It's been fantastic. It's been a hell of a trip.
I've come to you, but I believe that you spoke to Conchu earlier about coming onto the show.
I did. Yeah, he was. He was all right about it. He seemed okay. I think to sort of share the love, the Conchu love.
So Scott, we have this podcast about Moon Knight. I'm wondering if you're pretty keen to come onto the show.
Oh, Conchu, it'd be amazing. It'd be appreciated if you just let me on. I think I've seen what they do on the Isle of Ra. I want to share the love for the books, and I think walking in the moonlight with Conchu and defending the people of the night would be amazing. Okay,
well I'll get my lackey, High Priest of Conchu Ray, to get in touch with you. Just between you and me, he's a bit of a stooge, but he'll get you there. And I'll bring along Anubis with the raft.
Oh, that'd be greatly appreciated. I think I've heard Ray's a great bloke, but each to their own. I'm sure you've got your own opinion. You are a god, after all, and I think it'd be fantastic. Thanks for letting me come along.
So be it.
Well, just make some room here on the raft, sit yourself down, and we've just got a little while to go, but, while we're killing time, and since Anubis is no good, I thought it'd be really great to have you on the show, and really, actually, number one, to get to know you a bit more as well. You are a Loony as well in our Facebook group, so this is this is all about, sorry?
I was going to say, actually, the Loony group and the podcast, you're doing the God's work. The God being Conchu, obviously.
Yes.
He's given his authority for me to be here today. I've been a Moon Knight fan for a long, long time. So to find a podcast dedicated to it, and such a committed and friendly group of people on social media is fantastic. So you're doing a great job, you guys.
Oh, thank you very much, Scott. And it's people like you as well. And it's just, the friendliness and openness of a lot of the loonies, really has made the group. So, I share your sentiments exactly with all the loonies that have come and joined. So you're here, you're with us now, and we want to know a bit more about you as a fellow loony, but we also want to know, I guess, a bit of history. Take it almost as a spotlight on yourself, Scott. So what I first always kick off these interviews with is how did you first get into comics? Like, what was your earliest memory? Like, how old were you? What was the first issue you picked up?
Well, it's weird for me because I think comics has almost always been like part of my life, without almost not knowing it. When I was a little, like a wee lad, my grandparents, my Scottish grandparents, used to collect or used to read some Scottish books from back in their childhood. I can't remember what they're called now, but they were just there. So I'd sort of remember flicking through them before I could read and seeing the pictures and that sort of thing, and always wanting to be able to know what the stories are. And then as I got a bit older, being a Brit, I got the Beano and the Dandy, and then in the newspapers there's the little the Daily Shorts, and they were all kinds of different things. Hagar the Horrible, Andy Cap, and all those kinds of things. Garfield. So I've always aware of them, but I didn't realise I was reading comics really until. So I always thought that was what comics were. It was that sort of thing. And it was, I do vividly remember, though, the awakening into sort of more modern comics. I was about 11, probably 11, 10, 11. And it was a school summer holidays. I was going to go on a I was going on a trip with my nan, one of my grandparents, and she gave me some money and said, go buy yourself a magazine or a comic or something for the journey. And I went in expecting to buy some naff stuff like Looking or the Beano or something very late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
And shuffling through the thing, there was a cover. It was bright orange with a circle on it, and bursting through the circle was Judge Dredd on his law, and it was amazing, on his Lawmaster motorcycle. And I was just like, what's that? Why don't I know what that is?
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and it was back in the day. They used to reprint the early Judge Dredd stories, and they were called the Complete Judge Dredd. So they were the black and white newsprint editions, and it was I picked up. I couldn't tell you what issue it was now, but it was a central part of the Judge Dredd story called the Cursed Earth Saga.
Right.
Which is Judge Dredd and some of his fellow judges and some other members, a punk who has hand grenades for earrings, and they eventually pick up an alien called Tweaky who eats rocks, who's a genius. But they're basically they're trying to transport medicine from Mega City 1 to Tech City to save them, and it was amazing. I was blown away.
This is like a massive departure from your Hagar the Horrible and Garfield.
Oh,
so what was it like when you were growing up? Were you into like Saturday morning cartoons or anything like that? I'm just trying to find out. There must have been some seed in there for you to kind of look towards, say, a Judge Dredd or a superhero comic. Was there anything in there, like video games maybe, or movies?
No, movies has always been a big thing for me. And there were Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, going back through the 80s, I was a massive Ghostbusters fan of the film, and then of the cartoon, and there was He-Man, Transformers.
Was that the real Ghostbusters, which was slightly different? Yeah. That was good.
So I'm a kid of the 80s. Like, I was raised on those basically animated toy commercials. Funding by the Mattel or whatever. So I was big into those sort of things. He-Man, Transformers, and Ghostbusters were my jam. When I was a real kid, and again, I knew there were cartoons. I knew there were toys, and there was all that thing about these are the heroes and these are the villains and that sort of thing. And I know I wasn't getting that from the Beano. I wasn't really getting it. They were like, the Beano is very much a...
Yeah, what is a Beano?
So the Beano and the Dandy really are kids' comedy magazines or comedy comics, and you'd have characters like the British version of Dennis the Menace. You'd have the Bash Street Kids. In the Dandy, you'd have Desperate Dan, who was like a huge cowboy who would eat these massive cow pies, and they were all very, very silly. And the art was very caricature. It was very cartoony. Yeah. They were great. They were great as kids, but it wasn't sort of like it wasn't feeding that. Like you say, the superhero or the hero villain, and look, and nothing kind of thing.
Yeah, nothing to take away from those sorts of comics and cartoon, as you're saying, kind of simplified artworks, because I mean, people are massive fans of them even into adulthood. But I'd imagine there's a level of I guess development and sophistication growing up. Like your tastes would have changed, as you're saying, when you hit 11 and 12, as you're entering the teenage years, wanting something a bit more, a bit more grit, a bit more angsty, which I can imagine Judge Dredd would be exactly, would fall exactly on your lap for that sort of stuff.
Oh, and you're spot on, and that's exactly what it was. It was like, and I still think, I mean, even now, like, you can look back at the art in particular of like the Beano and the Dandy, and it shouldn't be underrated. It is fantastic. People will probably dismiss it as it's a kids' comic and that's it, but no, those artists, I couldn't name any unfortunately, but they were fantastic.
Right.
And actually, the great thing is, when we get onto one of the 4 books, there is a link. There's a weird little satirical link that we'll discuss later.
Okay, I think I know what you're alluding to, but Loonies, we will get to that. As mentioned, also, just before we get into it, that later on, in our episode summary, you'll see an encrypted link to it. So I didn't want to spoil anything for people that wanted to come in fresh, Scott, and just discover your 4 books. But if you do want to pre-read them beforehand in anticipation for this episode, just click the link and they should take you to links to the relevant issues that Scott has chosen for his ISLA RA Books, which is a very we've talked about this just online, Scott. It's a very difficult task, and I've heard that from a lot of people. A challenging but a rewarding one, I imagine.
It is. It's definitely a difficult task to pick 4 issues or 4 single books.
Yeah.
But you say it really makes you think, and it actually made me go back and read quite a few things. I was like, what about this? What about that? So. Yeah, it was good. It was good fun, actually. And
I think it's great as well. I mean, I think I've said this before early on in the early interviews. Everyone's got different tastes, and what hopefully some listeners take away from this is discovering like new issues or new series that they wouldn't have read previously. So, it's exciting to do, and it's always fun to find out what people's 4 books would be. So going on with the comic aspect of it, Scott, when you did, so do you still collect Judge Dredd now, or are you? I mean, how does that factor into like the big 2, like Marvel and DC, or are you an independent or Image person? What's your flavour?
No, it sort of it switches, it swings in sort of roundabouts really. At the moment, I'd say I'm more heavily DC.
Yep.
I'm loving what they're doing with Rebirth. And I've enjoyed the sort of the fun they've had with some of the characters. The last run of Superman was fantastic.
Yeah.
There's been some great stuff. But I'm now looking forward to some of the stuff that's in the future coming up. I mean, DC is really, I think, pushing the boat out. They've got the Black Label coming out. They've got stuff, so they're actually doing sort of Elseworld or external stories.
Yep, I've heard about that.
They've got like Batman. Yes, they've got Batman Damned, which is Batman and John Constantine teaming up, which is coming out, and they've got some others as well. That's sort of like, but that's like got Liber Mayo on the art, and I think he's a fantastic artist.
Oh, fantastic.
So there's books like that. They're bringing back the Sandman universe.
Yes.
With a series of books,
and that's endorsed by Gaiman as well. He's in there some capacity, right?
Yes.
I don't think he's writing it, but he's doing something. Right? He's overlooking it or something.
Yeah. It's almost like if you take a TV analogy, he's almost going to be like a showrunner. I think, like a chief story editor. So so he's still there. It's still his world, which is going to be fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. And what do you think of? I know I'm not very well versed in DC. You'll have to forgive me, Scott. But what do you think of the? They released a whole slew of new characters, and new titles. What do you think? Is that an exciting thing, or are there a lot of hits and misses? What's your take on it?
It was definitely hits and misses. I think the problem they hit, and it was obvious from the sort of the characters that they created were, as far as I'm concerned, I think the superhero genre has almost run dry in many respects. Yeah. You get a lot of legacy characters, and that's not to say there aren't new characters to do, but you get a lot of repeats. I mean, I really like some of the legacy characters that they've created in the last couple of years. Everything from Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, to Miles Morales. They're great, and they're bringing in new people, and I quite enjoy their stories. Yeah, but it's still Miss Marvel. It's still Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I find Kamala Khan. I mean, she's really kind of come out of the gates, hasn't she? And I think she'll be very she will be. Years from now, you look back and she'll be well entrenched in the whole canon, obviously, of Marvel. And I think it's great what G. Willow Wilson has done with Miss Marvel. But yeah, I know what you mean. There still is a leaning heavily on the legacy characters, and people do you see on the internet. The internet's just a sea of opinion, and people have their opinions about keeping things pure, and others champion diversity and such, which is good. And so I think the DC, those new titles, I think you're mentioning that they're taking a bold steps with stuff. I think by introducing these characters is fantastic.
It is, it's good. I mean, the thing is, if you were to look at them, the set that they've created, the only, and I wouldn't say it's an issue because they're there for a reason, but you look at them in the characters, there is a counterpart to them. So I think there's a character called Sideways, who, for all intents and purposes, although he doesn't have Spider-Man's powers, is a Peter Parker Spider-Man type character. Yeah. There's another one that's basically the Hulk. The Hulk,
yeah. He has 1 hour to change into the Hulk or something, or is he called Damage or something? Or I can't remember.
Damage, that's it.
Yeah.
That's right. There's Silencer, which is basically a female assassin. So she's a lot. So they're all of a sort of a type. They've all got a type. But the thing I always remember is, every single issue of a comic could be somebody's first comic.
Yes.
And if those new characters appeal to someone because of the design, or because of the power set they have, or just whatever, if those new characters launch out at somebody, just like that Judge Dredd issue launched out at me, then that is wonderful. That's fantastic. So I might not read them, they may not appeal to me, but I'm 36, they're not supposed to appeal to me.
Yeah, true. There's a wide demographic.
Exactly. Yeah. So they will appeal to somebody, and I think that's why I'm so pleased that they're doing these things and taking these bold steps and trying new things.
Yeah. Would you say, I've heard it, and again, I can't really speak to it because I don't collect many DC titles. You do collect a fair amount of Marvel as well, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I get a few. I mean, they're up and down. Obviously, Moon Knight.
Of course. But how would you say both of them are faring against each other? Would say DC's storytelling wise and building a universe, how are they going? I've heard DC are doing better. I've heard Marvel are still kind of ahead in that regards. What's your take?
Again, it's sort of. I think it's almost. I wouldn't say unfair to make the comparison because they're both
That's
comic
true.
worlds.
Yeah.
But they do have different directions. And I think if you were to consider them as a unified world, I think they both work. They both work in fantastic ways.
Yeah.
In the fact that, like, with the Marvel universe, like, you can read a Captain America book and you're going to get Cap's, subsidiary of characters, Bucky, Sharon Carter, Falcon, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But then you're also probably going to read the Spider-Man book and you're going to get his subsidiary characters, but then you will get crossovers.
Yeah.
So it's a linked universe.
Yeah.
The problem I have with DC, with the problem I have with Marvel at times is I do think, and I think this comes to their management, is that they have a tendency to talk crap. That they go, oh no, we're not going to do a big event for the next 18 months. Oh, apart from this Infinity Wars thing and this Spider-Verse thing we're going to do. It is like they can't help themselves.
I do distinctly remember them announcing that, and then not long after you had Secret Empire, I think it was, and it's not an event, but it is. I mean, yeah.
They almost try to be sneaky by saying we're not having like a massive summer event, but we're going to have individual character events, and it was just like, oh, stop it, you're driving me away.
Yeah, look, it's difficult. Look, I try not to obviously compare them because each to their own, and they're both are great universes in their own right. But it's only I kind of find myself going back again and again because you get these parallels which happen. Like case in point is the return of say if you take Jason Aaron's Avengers. Released around the same time as the new Justice League or No Justice, I think it was, and it's kind of like and I read an article and it was really cool because it was kind of like they both were coming out about the same time, both showcasing these big top tier superhero teams. DC were going the way that Marvel were trying to get out of. So DC were with that No Justice thing, they've broken up the Justice League into smaller bands, smaller little teams, which Marvel did previously with the Avengers. Like you had the US Avengers, you had West Coast Avengers, you had and now Marvel are trying to consolidate all that and just go back to grassroots and have your Avengers led by Captain America, Iron Man and Thor, which we see in the Jason Aaron run. So it's always hard to kind of not make the comparisons because, from time to time they do kind of cross.
Oh, it's true. It's a wheel. I mean, the whole thing's cyclical. They're just at different points on that wheel. Yeah. And this will happen again. Like the Avengers will split up again in the future, and you'll get the West Coast Avengers is a current book. Yes. And you probably will get those things again. Yeah. And it's like I say, it just goes round and round. And sometimes I want them, and sometimes I don't. And so it's great. But the thing I would say is the big difference, and more intellectual and better versed people than me have talked about it, is the fact that really the big difference is that Marvel it's a lived-in universe. They're real people that have come across their powers for the most part through either experimentation or accident or intervention. So it ends up being like regular people dealing. So when you have Galactus, trying to eat the world.
Don't speak too loudly. We're in the cosmos. Yeah. We don't want
to. Don't tip him off. Yeah. But when you have those sort of events, and you have sort of like Captain America or the Fantastic Four, or some of those characters, even like you say, Black Widow will be in there. You're sort of like, okay, that's a real person. That's just a person with a shotgun or up against this intergalactic being. Yeah. Which is why I think when you look back at things like Infinity War, it stands up well because it's sort of regular-ish, with superpowers, regular people trying to stand up to an intergalactic being. Yeah. But then when you go to the DC universe, they are literal gods. Yes. Superman is that Zeus character. He is the sun god. He is that ultimate being. Then you have Wonder Woman, who's the female equivalent. Yeah. And it goes on and on. So it seems almost like, if they just beat the hell out of Galactus, it wouldn't seem a problem. Yeah, there's a really good, I think, 3-part documentary. It's hosted by Liev Schreiber. He's the guy that played Sabretooth in the Wolverine films. Have you seen that? No. I think I've heard of it. I think I know what you're saying.
It's really good. It harks, it echoes what you say, basically. And the big difference between DC and Marvel, when DC kind of broke out into the greater market, was that it had these flawless superheroes. They were kind of seen apart from the human race. And then Marvel came along, and you had Peter Parker dealing with, relationships and getting through high school. And, you had the Fantastic Four, which was more family-oriented and had the family dynamics. And, and that was one thing that I found really interesting, initially at least. I'm not sure, again, how DC are now. I'm sure it's kind of, everything's leveled out a little bit more. But back in the day,
it's definitely, it's interesting. You say that because they've tried to bring them down a bit. You know, obviously with Superman, he's now got a family. He's you know, Lois Lane, you've got Jonathan Kent, and it brings a new dynamic to that world.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, back in the day, I mean, just to comment on something in a moment, but back in the day, if you were to take 10, 15 years ago, Batman and Superman, like you say, being, you know, Zeus and Hades or whatever, being those sort of like couldn't be beaten kind of characters. It made they were on their own. They had, like, you know, again, they're subsidiary characters, but they were very much standalone. Now they are fathers.
Yes.
You know, they are literal fathers. So it changes the dynamic for the responsibility. So all of a sudden, Superman flying across the cosmos or flying around Metropolis or the US or the world, you know, putting out fires and, you know, saving cats from trees or whatever. Yeah. He's now like, well, I can't do that because I've got to be home.
Yeah.
For a certain time.
More consideration.
Yeah, so it does make the stories different now. He can't just go off to his Fortress of Solitude and mope about it or whatever.
Yeah, there was one of the earlier, actually, I think officially the first Isla Ra kind of books we had with Sons of the Dragon, Connor from the Iron Fist podcast. One of his Isla Ra books was a Superman one, which it was a one where they tried to really kind of ground all the heroes. So Superman, you know, was buying 200 t-shirts because he knew that they'd break all the time, and he was wearing jeans and didn't have a cape. And I found that interesting how they really kind of changed. Yeah. Did you read that or?
I did. There was the New 52, so they did that in sort of Superman in the Action Comics in the New 52, and it was interesting that they tried to reduce his power set to make him more appealing. But I mean, you have to remember a big part of these characters, especially the DC ones, is they're actually a representation of the time they were created. So when you look at the, you know, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, those characters, Captain Marvel is another example. They're a representation of a period in time where they were created out of the Great Depression. You know, so in the 30s, America was in a terrible state. And you got the initial pulp characters like, you know, Doc Savage, the Shadow, the Avenger, the Spider, and they were great because they were quite clear cut. They were either heroes or they were quite, you know, like Doc Savage, who, you know, the Man of Bronze, and the Shadow, you know, who would be literally a figure of fear in the shadows. So I wonder where the Man of Steel and the Dark Knight came from. But they were growing out of that, so they grew out of that. And people's need for clean-cut, godlike superheroes. They needed that. That's why they took off so much. But though 30 years later, 30 years later, like I say, they were a bit more of a pastiche. And when Stan Lee takes on the initiative to rebuild Marvel characters and you know, take on that challenge, he looks out his window and sees a very, very different world, and sees a world that's now split on social differences and racial differences, and you know, it's that sort of thing. So he, like you say, you have those characters like the X-Men that are a representation of the civil rights movement and all that kind of thing. So it's great to see that actually they might be balancing out, but superheroes can be a great barometer of what's going on in society.
Oh, look, Scott, you should really have a look at this 3-part documentary. A part of me says,
I'm going to find it.
Yeah, part of me says, I think it's on Netflix. I think, or I think it's on Netflix. I think, but actually, another part of me says you don't need to, because you are pretty much summing up what they're saying, which is actually absolutely brilliant. So that's really, really good. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And another thing that you actually touched upon was Stan Lee. He made everything more realistic. He based everything in New York, whereas Gotham and Metropolis are, you know, fictitious places. We have Stan Lee just basing all his heroes in a real city, and I think that made a big difference as well as all the zeitgeist, the period that things were in as well. So, fantastic stuff. Look, speaking of comics, I'm a king of the segue here, Scott. Another question I do want to ask as well, and I do find this fascinating, and I'd like to ask all future guests as well. Have you got a local comic book store by any chance as well?
I did have, actually. Until I think it was probably about, it closed down last November, which was a real, bit of a not really. But on my part, I've had them on, the two guys that ran it Matt and J-Man have been on my podcast on a number of occasions.
Oh, fantastic.
Talk about different things. And they've actually started their own podcast now.
Oh.
They now do a podcast called Toon Jam, and they discuss 90s cartoons.
Oh, excellent. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's really good.
Well,
so,
yep, sorry.
Come on.
Oh, no,
go on.
I was about to say, look, we're definitely going to touch upon podcasting next as well. But say, for instance, that store, can you give it a shout? So it's still running, right, the store? As you say, closed down.
Closed,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So I have to get mine. Mine's an online thing now, unfortunately.
Okay, no worries. Well, I was gonna ask you to describe the layout of the store and stuff, because it always interests me, at least, as to how these comic book stores are all over the world. But so mostly online. Who do you do online purchasing from?
Forbidden Planet.
That's the big, awesomely big comic book store in London, right?
Yes. They've got them dotted all over the country.
Oh, okay, right.
In fact, it was so there is. I hail from Coventry in England, and they've got a Forbidden Planet there.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of my comic origin story.
Right.
Was, like I say, once I'd sort of got past, or once I was hooked on Judge Dredd in 2000 AD, so all the characters that that contains. So 2000 AD, for those that don't know, is a British, it's a sci-fi and horror anthology comic. Mm-hmm. So each issue is a collection of probably about 5 or 6 stories, and each story is about 8 pages. They have like little chapters, written and drawn by different people. Weekly comic, been going since 1977. Still going strong. And
cool.
So I was on that, getting that from my news agents, and it was just in a conversation, I think, at school. Someone mentioned, there's a comic shop in town. And again, I was like, what? I remember going to town and going to Forbidden Planet for the first time and just walking in.
Wow.
And just being, blown away.
So,
oh my God.
How did that look? Oh, is it a massive store? A lot of long boxes to sift through?
Not so much anymore. They used to. They used to have all the sort of the old back issues and stuff, which were great. It's almost like a 2-room store, and when you walk in nowadays, the front sort of part of the room is all the toys. So your Funko Pops and your all your figures and some of the really high end.
Yep.
£200, £400 kind of models. I know. You look at me, and you go, "That's lovely."
Yeah.
Never going to be in my house. And all this, there's a lot of the books and stuff there, and then they've got a room at the back which is dedicated to the comics and graphic novels, and that's where the weeklies are and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And it was it's great. It's a really good store, and I think Forbidden Planet do a great job of presenting everything in a really accessible way. So, they've got like the shelves that are Marvel, they've got the shelves that are DC, they've got the shelves that are Image, and so on and so forth. So, whatever you're looking for is there. You should be able to find it. Yeah. And the staff have always been great. Even sort of say going back to the day and now, they've always been pretty good. So,
great.
Yeah, there's a reason they stuck around for so long.
Yeah, I didn't realise that they were like a franchise. Like they had little stores all over. I thought it was just the one big store. But that I think it's about 9 or 10 stores across the country. Wow.
So
all right. Yeah, it always interests me about the layout because, say, for instance, so when you're saying that they put the toys and the high end stuff at the front, as a consumer, obviously you have the stuff like the Funko, which I think the turnover, I'm imagining, might be a lot quicker because it's it's a collectible thing, and if you're a collector, you want to get the whole set stuff. But by putting the books at the back, you kind of have to go through all that stuff to get to the main... Because it always baffles me, why aren't the books and the graphic novels at the front? You're at a comic book store, right? But it must be all... obviously all to do with marketing and stuff. I mean, our local comic book store as well has a very kind of an incidental... I mean, there's a display stand for toys and stuff. But again, you have to go to the back of the store to get your weekly comics and your trades. So... it's just quite interesting, I find.
It is. I think there's an acceptance nowadays within the retail element of this that comics, whilst are the backbone of all this, probably aren't the biggest money maker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people are drawn in. So your casual fans that have seen a couple of Marvel films and have seen Justice League or whatever, they are going to be enticed in by saying, "Oh, look, there's an action figure or a Funko Pop or a model or whatever of Batman or Wolverine or whoever."
Yeah.
And it's that sort of enticement, isn't it? It's that psychological thing of like, come into the store, come into the store.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you've got them in the store, you can say, "Oh, you like Batman? You should try out some of the books in the back store." So I think it's
and it can be intimidating as well. Like, you know, if you do like the films, and you want to crack into comics, like I've had people say as well that, you know, I really want to, but I don't know where to start. You know, it's a massive universe, you know, let alone picking what, you know, DC or Marvel or looking at independents. So yeah, there's a lot to think about, and I think you're right. You know, it's kind of teasing them in, and then kind of getting the hooks in, so to speak, once they're in there. So. Look, I want to veer away a little bit from the comics now because I really want to talk about podcasting. So generally with guests as well, I usually ask as the other question, a follow-up. You know, we've had writers on as well as some other podcasters. But podcasting, you host 20th Century Geek, which is fantastic. I'll put the link in the show notes for anyone out there interested.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about it, Scott. How did it come about, and basically what is it about?
So what's it about? So 20th Century Geek is it's a podcast in which I delve into anything and everything from pop and geek culture from the 20th century. Is the idea. So it's an open forum, really. I can choose any topic I want. Yeah. Basically, it's my podcast. Yeah. And it came about because when I went to university, I did history. So I've always had that sort of like, you know, interest. And as I sort of mentioned before, I started to make these links in my head about, here's the social things that were going on, here's the historical elements of things that were going on. Oh, but look, this is what's happening in geek culture. So I was, you know, big things like the 60s being a counterculture movement, and you can see it being represented in the original Star Trek series. You know, the first interracial kiss, the sort of, you know, the short skirts, all that sort of thing. And so you get that. I found that more and more interesting. So just of my own accord, I started to sort of pick into it, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I thought, you know, my own thing, I was like, okay, well, I know Superman's the first superhero, but where did he come from? You know, so I read a couple of books about the origins of Superman, and they kept mentioning these pulp heroes being the forebears of those, like, you know, again, Doc Savage, The Shadow, and that sort of thing. And then when I was like, okay, well, I'm really interested, I want to see what those are all about now. So then I read about those, and then they were like, oh, but before them, there was Buck Rogers and John Carter of Mars and Tarzan and Sherlock Holmes, and I was like, okay, so there's just this knock-on effect of, you know, things grow on top of things, you know, there's that the ripple effect. Yeah. And I found it that was more in so I started in superheroes, and I was really interested in it, and I listened to a whole heap of podcasts, and I always still do. But the one thing that, you know, the one person that stuck out a lot to me was Kevin Smith, the filmmaker and podcaster, and, you know, the king of geek sort of thing. Yeah. And one of his things that he kept saying was like, just do it, like, you know, don't think about it, just do it. Don't ask what. It was sort of don't be a why person, be a why not. You know, don't just think, oh, why should I do that? So why not try that? Yeah. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to try a few things, see how it fits, and see what happens, and to see what see where it takes off. And originally it was going to be called 100 Years of Superheroes. Oh, right, okay. And then, but the more I dug into it, the more I was like, actually, I don't want to limit myself to that. There's so much more. Yeah. Oh, I find interesting. Yeah. Oh gosh, your show has been really. I got introduced to your show looking for something on Superman, and so I watched. I listened to the couple of episodes dedicated to that, which was great. And then I look on your list of episodes, and what do I see next? It was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, so something totally different, out of the ordinary. I did a bit more digging as well, and I think I sent a message to you as well. Absolutely loved your overview of Red Dwarf. You have a Red Dwarf thing, which is again, like, very different from you know, your superheroes and your Roger Rabbits.
And now I see there's a lot of horror films that you look into as well.
Yeah, so like I say, it's a great fact. I can pretty much do anything I want.
Yeah.
So I've done. I'm a big fan of Red Dwarf from back in the day, and all the films. So yeah, and I literally June just gone. I did Italian horror from. We looked at Lucio Fulci from the early '80s, and Mario Bava for his work in the '60s. Because I've never looked at Italian, I've never really watched much of it. I've seen bits and pieces, but I really should dig into that. And then for July, I'm doing sci-fi comics of the '90s.
Awesome.
So I'm reading a series called The Meta Barons, which has been recommended to me by a friend of mine called Julian Darius, who I've done several shows with now. He created an organisation called Sequart, which is online, and
he's the American dude, isn't he? Is he the American dude?
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So he sort of his organisation takes a more academic approach to comic analysis. And I've got a load of their books, and they're fantastic. And so he recommended that. So I said, okay, well let's talk about it. So we're going to talk about that.
Awesome.
And then to add on to that, we're going to talk about a single story from the Judge Dredd universe, Judge Dredd America.
Oh wow!
Which I think is quite apropos of the social ongoings in America at the moment. So
very good.
So I can dip and choose wherever I want, really.
Yeah, it must be great to have that flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's been really fun, and I've spoken. The good thing about it is, and like you said, it's you can talk to so many people, and you find out so many different stories of how things have come about. And the great thing I've found is people want to talk about the things that they're involved in. So I've reached out to people. Like I said, like with Julian, I just reached out to him over Twitter and email and said, I'd really like to talk about these things. And he came on, and we've have several episodes now. But last year I spoke to I forget the guy's name now, but the guy who played Chucky in the Child's Play films, the first two Child's Play films.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So the guy who was in the suit.
Yeah.
So in the actual I've spoken to the guy who was an editor on 2000 AD for 7 years, from 91 to 98.
Yeah.
And just reached out. One of the best ones is recently I spoke to. There's a book called Paperbacks from Hell, which is about the boom in sort of like trashy horror paperbacks in the late 70s and early 80s.
Right.
By a guy called Grady Hendrix, who's an author as well. And again, I just reached out to him and said, I've really enjoyed your book. Would you mind coming on and having a chat about it? And he was like, yeah, not a problem. So people are willing to talk about things, and it's you learn, and people are fascinating. So it's really good. Yeah,
that's so, and it's so easy to talk to people that are obviously invested in what they're talking about. So that's really great, and that's what I find as well. Like it's so reassuring to reach out to people. Yeah, basically on Twitter, that's what I do as well. Just reach out to people on Twitter, and if they like to chat about something that they're really into, then that's not too difficult to get them on, which is really cool. With the movies, what do you think of the current state of the comic book movies that we see now, as well as the TV? Do you do any, apart from Red Dwarf? Do you do any TV shows?
Yeah. I'm a big. I try and do as much as I can. There's so much content that it's quite hard to keep up.
Yeah.
I'm a little behind on like the Netflix superhero shows. I haven't seen the latest Jessica Jones or the latest
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage.
Yeah.
So I've got those two to watch. But no, I think they're great. Again, it's that thing of I think they get into a position now where they're not just doing a superhero show and it being a superhero show, so they're not just being done as the cheesy, like the 90s Flash, or even Smallville had its time, but you've now got so much diversity that I don't watch, I haven't really watched Cloak and Dagger, I didn't watch Gifted, or The Runaways. They look like, I watched the first episode and thought, oh, these are great. They're aimed at people a lot younger than me, teen drama and that sort of thing, so great.
Yeah,
but that's fun that they've...
Sorry, I must say, I mean, like just today, I watched watch the latest Cloak and Dagger, and I've got only like 1 or 2 episodes of The Runaways to go. And yeah, exactly as you say, it's a different flavour. Same with The Gifted. It catered for a different audience, but well, maybe The Gifted more so because they are mutants. But with Cloak and Dagger, the emphasis really isn't on their superpowers or anything like that. I mean, you get to see a bit of it, and some fans may be, a little upset that you don't see enough of Cloak's cloak and his teleporting ability.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have changed a lot, haven't they, over the years? And you mentioned The Flash with John Wesley's ship. That was one of my favourite series back in the 90s. Looking back,
it was amazing.
It was cool, wasn't it? And
yeah, it was so good.
Looking back on it, just the colour, like the I don't know, the set designs and stuff was so 90s. It was really funny. But yeah, that things have changed, and now you have different genres in the movies as well. I mean, obviously the obvious one is Winter Soldier being like a spy kind of thriller, as opposed to like Ant-Man and the Wasp now, which is more of a light-hearted romp. So yeah, it's an interesting time for comic books, comic book movies.
It is, but I think it truly is the golden age of. Not just comic books, but like for geek content, if you would want to call it that. That there is so much diverse that I don't have to feel. There's no pressure for me to watch. Even like 10, 15, again, like 10 years ago, that if there was something on TV, you latched onto it, that you were like, that's mine, and I'm going to watch it because it fits into my. Even if it was rubbish.
Yeah.
But now, like you say, there's so much that people can try. So if I want to watch something a bit silly, I can lean into that, and there's something to watch. Or I can go diverse. I mean, at the moment, I am literally jumping between 3 shows. I'm watching the 3rd season of Lucifer, which I think is fantastic. I think Tom Ellis as Lucifer is brilliant. It's not as pure as the comic it's based on. They've tried to give it almost like a procedural murder investigation framework.
Okay.
But it works, and he's fantastic. I really enjoy it. I'm then watching The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh yes, brilliant, isn't it? Oh god,
it's fantastic. I've got two episodes of that left of the 1st season, so we're catching up. And then I've just finished season 1 of Westworld, ready to dive into season 2. So
I know, there's a lot of content, isn't there?
Yeah, so that's why I haven't got it around to Jessica Jones and Luke Cage yet. But it's not for want of trying, but the fact of the matter is it's so good. Like no one is no one's like resting on their laurels anymore. All of these shows are just hitting a mark. It might not be my mark, but it's hitting it for someone, and that's what's so good about it. Like there is someone out there who's loving that show, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, and the production quality of TV shows are now just not level pegging with movies, because big budget movies obviously have a lot more, but they are very good, aren't they? The standards of TV shows, and so I find as well. I wonder. I mean, because you are quite a movie buff here, Scott. Do you find how does it impact your movie viewing? I guess now, because I guess what I'm getting at is with these great TV shows at the moment, it's a lot easier to just and with the time constraints that we have these days, it's a lot easier to watch one episode of a season than to invest a 3.5 hour time slot to watch, say, Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? There's a lot more investment for movies that you have to really set time aside. We've all got busy lifestyles, and do you find that, or do you give yourself enough time to watch the movies that you want to watch?
No, you're totally right. That time is definitely a commodity that I wish I had more of. It's funny that you say that, because I think films have got longer, and it's and sometimes I wonder why. So it is when you gave the example of Winter Soldier, which is easily my favourite Marvel MCU movie. But it's well over 2 hours long.
It is.
So if I was to sit down, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to sit down. What time is it? All right, 7:30. Right, if I watch this now, it's going to be like 10 o'clock by the time I finish it.
Yeah.
So you do have to sort of think about these things.
Yeah.
And so it is easier sometimes just to watch TV. But there are films I will make time for. Like you say, I'm going to watch this, and I'll fit it in and do something.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's quite funny that recently, just recently I saw on Netflix,
Yeah.
I think it was on Netflix or Prime or something, on one of the streaming services,
Mm-hmm.
one of their options, they do like by genre, don't they? So action, horror, suspense,
Yep.
comedy, whatever. One of theirs was less than 90 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So films,
Yeah.
films less than 90 minutes. So if you want to, here's your choice if you haven't got the time. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that's a really good idea.
Oh, geez, that's indicative of it, isn't it? Like, it's really just telling what everyone's thinking, basically. We're getting long movies, and and here's an option for you if you need it. Tying it back to a little closer to ITK now, like with movies, Scott, would you prefer to see a TV show or a movie of Moon Knight? What would your preference be?
To be fair, seeing what they've done, if they were to time Mooney into the MCU, I think they would struggle. Mm-hmm. I think he. Whilst I'm always going to say I'd love to see him on the big screen.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
If you were going to be honest to him and be authentic to the character, I think a Netflix type show would be perfect. I think it's 8 to 10 episodes.
Yes.
There was that interview recently, wasn't it? And two guys said how they'd love to do it. And the only problem with Moon Knight is, whilst he is awesome, and he is awesome now.
Yes, I know which one. Yep.
You have to go through the elements that begin with this. He's relatively cheesy, a bit silly.
Yeah.
To get to that. But I think with the right writers, you could easily do that. And I think almost, if you were to be really clever, you could look at his origins and you could go, all right, we don't need that, we don't need this.
Yes.
What has been created in the last, I can't remember years now, but from the Warren Ellis run through the Lemire run through Bemis, you could take that now and be like, actually, that's the origin story. This is the story of someone's mental health collapse, and how they've actually used this figure of Khonshu to sort of as a beacon to actually for good, and the use of their mental illness. I think it could be really interesting.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. I totally agree with you. I mean, obviously, Loonies have different factions of what they want to see on the big screen, small screen. My preference, obviously, is similar to yourself, like Netflix. Like yourself having it on Netflix, and funny that you mentioned that, going for the 8 to 10 episodes. Again, a lot of people are starting to feel that 13 episodes is a bit long now in shows, so they're looking to cut it back to 8 to 10, which I think is fine. I mean, having watched The Handmaid's Tale, 10 episodes, I think it was 10 or 11, was really good.
It is 10, yeah.
Yeah, really nice bite-sized chunk of a season. So that's really cool. And look, and just finally, before we get onto, funny you should mention Warren Ellis, but anyway, before we get onto your ISLA RA books, which really want to dive into, just further on to that Moon Knight question, how did you get into Moon Knight? How were you introduced to him?
So with Moon Knight, it was again, I was on holiday just a weekend away in Whitby in the north of England. I was into comics. I was collecting quite a lot, and we went to a second-hand bookshop, and I can't resist a second-hand bookshop. Yeah. I have to admit, that's another sort of thing I've got. I'll always go into a second-hand bookshop. My wife rolls her eyes and she's like, "I'll see you in an hour." And I went in, and they had all the books and some great books, and then in the corner was a cardboard box, and it was 50p an issue. Ooh. And I was like, it was for just a stack of comics. Yeah. And I just sort of like rummaged through, and there was some Nomad and some early sort of better Riley, Scarlet Spider, and all sort of stuff. Good. Yeah, and then at the bottom there was Mark Spector Moon Knight. And I had never really seen the character. I think I'd seen him once or twice. He'd appeared in something, and so it was in my periphery sort of thing. Yeah. But I was like, this is very interesting, 50p an issue. And there was about 6 or 7 issues of Mark Spector Moon Knight. But then below that, right at the bottom, were 4 issues of the original Munch run.
Lovely.
And they were sort of, if I remember right, it was issues 9, 10, and I think some of the 20s. But I opened it up, and it was the Bill Sienkiewicz art. Yep. And I was just like, these are awesome. I've got 50p an issue. So I just grabbed them. Yeah. And I think one of them was issue 16, which is got a fold-out cover.
Oh, okay, yes.
the Monster, and I was like, these are brilliant. Like, the character seems a bit odd.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, okay, I want to read a bit more. And that's when I went, and from that I picked up some other sort of standalone issues.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, soon after that, the Houston run was released.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, 2006. That really kind of brought Mooney back into it a bit. Did you get the Mark Spector Moon Knight ones as well when you?
I have got, and it's a humble brag. Let's be honest, because it's great. I have got every single issue of all the Moon Knight runs.
Whoa! Awesome. Yeah,
it's taken me quite a long time, and probably more money than I'd admit to the wife. But so. And I've got some issues in there that I'm very, very pleased with. Even the sort of, because you obviously know at the end of Mark Spector.
Yes, the Stephen Platt ones. Yeah.
So I've got those ones are quite rare. I've actually got a signed Stephen Platt.
Whoa, nice one.
Yeah, I came across that, and that was like, I was like, okay, this is quite cool. And again, I think sometimes I got this in a comic shop in the south of England, and sometimes I think people don't know what they've got, and it was there for £15, and I was like, wow. I'm having that.
Yes, £15 a steal. Freaking hell.
It was. I was amazed. Oh, right.
Yeah, you have posted it up, haven't you? I'm pretty sure you made.
No, I haven't. Someone else has. I will have to.
Yeah,
actually,
please do. Please do.
It's a great piece, and then there's a few others. So the other things that sort of then there's after the end of this Mark Spector Moon Knight run, which I don't think is a spoiler to say, but he dies obviously. He sacrifices himself at the end of that run. Why they haven't reprinted that run, I don't know, but they really should. I'm hoping they do it in the Epic series. They did. There's 2 4-issue mini-series.
Resurrection War and High Strangers.
That's it. Yeah. And they're fantastic. They're
good.
Really weird. They're really weird, but they're really good.
Yeah, we reviewed not too long ago the Resurrection War. Artwork by Tommy Lee Edwards, fantastic, kind of all really Mike Mignola-esque, and written by Doug Munch as well. So that was a good one. And High Strangers, I think it won an award when it was. It
did.
Yeah.
I think it did. Yeah. It's really good. It's in. They're just those things. They're forgotten books.
Yeah.
Even for some, casual Moon Knight fans, they're books that I think need revisiting. That because a lot of people seem to start with the Houston run.
Yes.
Because it's the 21st century sort of like starting point. But there's so much goodness before that.
There is, and I think a lot has to do with let's get those 4-issue runs in trades or something, make them a bit more available, because at the moment they're really hard to come across. But wow, you're an Amiga level loony here, Scott. I didn't realise you had the whole collection.
I have. They're in a long box of their own in the loft at the moment.
Fantastic.
And, they're a bit of a moment of pride. The thing is, there's characters. I'm a big fan of sort of, obviously the big level characters. I'm a big fan of Captain America, and you've got like Batman and Superman. But there's a load of like B, C, and almost D level characters that I just think don't get enough push at times. And I'm glad Moon Knight's really sort of like working his way up. The ladder.
I think so, and I guess especially with social media, it's good to make a bit of noise because especially as you're saying, this golden age of comic books in the movies and in all sorts of mediums, he seems to be mentioned like a lot for TV series and movies, and it's only a matter of time before the higher ups kind of get the idea, get the message. But you're right, a lot of D. I used to love Death's Head. Do you remember Death's Head?
Yes.
That was great. Death's Head 1 and 2. I loved...
yes.
Yeah, Death's Head 2 for me, that run was really good because alongside Infinity Gauntlet, it was one of the few times you actually see in the alternate reality like superheroes die and stuff, and it was really a massive... I really enjoyed it when it first came out. The artwork was brilliant. I think it was... because Death's Head is English, right?
He is. Yeah. So there was a Marvel UK boom There was a Marvel UK set up in the early 90s, and they had a sort of all these characters, and they're very 90s. Lots of pouches and guns. But Death's Head's one of those. And weirdly enough, Death's Head in canon, it was in a Death's Head issue. I'm not sure how it happened, or I do know how it happened. Had a cameo from Doctor Who.
What? Really?
Yeah, seriously. So, because at the time, Marvel UK had the rights to create and reprint the Doctor Who comic.
Cool.
So he appeared. So Doctor Who, I think it's the Sylvester McCoy. So it's the Seventh Doctor appeared in a Death's Head issue.
Wow.
So technically, Doctor Who exists in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. How cool. That's so cool. Marvel, has infinite different universes, but it's always cool to think that the Doctor Who is mixing it with Doctor Strange.
That's it, yeah.
Awesome.
Especially being out here in the cosmic, you might see a little blue box flying past.
That's it. That's it. Though. Who knows? We might see one a bit later on. Oh, awesome. All right. Well, hey, but let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I think we'll get right into your 4 ISLA RA books. How's that?
Sounds good.
Excellent. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Phil Parrish from the Caves and Lunatics podcast, a proud member of the collective, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Welcome back, Loonies. Yes, I am here with a Beyonder, Scott, from 20th Century Geek podcast, and he's also a fellow Loony. We're doing Scott's ISLA RA books tonight, and as we sail through the cosmos here on the raft, Anubis is still pretty quiet back there. How you going there, mate? No, his eyes are focused. He's sailing along. I'm here with Scott, and you have brought with you tonight on this raft 4 of your favourite books. And as
I have,
and as always, we'll go through your 2 honourable mentions. So I guess ranked 3 and 4 from your top 4, and then we might bounce somewhere else to cover your last final 2 comics. So, without further ado, I'm just pulling it up here. The first book that you have chosen, Scott, is an Image book.
Yes.
And this one is Chew. This is a strange one. Chew Warrior Chicken. Is it Poyo?
I think it's Poyo.
Poyo. Yeah. And how about I pass it to you for the credits here, Scott?
Okay, so it's Robert. It's called Chew. This was a spin-off one shot called Warrior Chicken Poyo, written by John Layman and drawn by Robert Gilroy, and coloured by Robert Gilroy as well. Mm-hmm. It's so it's trying to put it into context, really. So Chew is a 60-issue series, written by John Layman and drawn and coloured by Rob Gilroy. It deals with a guy called Tony Chew, who has a power that anything he eats, he can pick up the history of it.
Okay.
And so he's a detective, so he ends up having to do a murder mystery, and the way he can solve the murder is by taking a bite out of the body, and it goes on from there. And then it comes down to this weird conspiracy where chicken's been banned, and all this other stuff. It's a crazy, crazy book. It's incredibly imaginative.
Yeah.
It's very funny. So people start having food-related powers. So, like you say, he can get the history of food. Some guy can gain super strength from food, and it's very bizarre, but it's amazing.
So that's in Chew, the 60-issue run, right? You're mentioning?
Yeah.
Okay.
So within that, there's a law enforcement agency where the agents are teamed up with cybernetic animals, and one of those cybernetic animals, or the most feared of those cybernetic animals, is this cybernetic rooster called Poyo.
Yeah, it's a really... Oh, look, I had no idea what to expect when I read this. It is really bizarre. Thanks for putting it into context, actually, because I haven't read Chew. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I haven't gotten around to reading it, but that starts to make sense a little, basically because... This is so funny because Poyo is like this indestructible, the top tier friggin' superhero in this universe, and even to the fact where he can't even hang around to receive the praise from everyone after he's done something. He's got to go on to his next mission. He just hasn't got time to do that. But it explains, as you're saying with Chew, because a lot of the villains here, it was the Grocerio-mancers. or the Mansa, which look how about, would you like to explain, like in a nutshell, what happens in this issue?
So in this, so Puyo, it starts with a little sort of anthology of Puyo's successful missions, everything from saving the President of the United States from what I think are supposed to be French terrorists, to being shrunken down and saving him from sort of antibodies or something inside him. But he is like the $6 million chicken. Anyway, it turns out that he's not right. You say he's not around for the celebration. He's sent off somehow. It doesn't explain. It never explains how, but he's been sent off to a fantasy world, which is basically filled with every cliched fantasy element you can think of.
I love this, and it's just so many references to things that I recognise. It's like, oh yeah, that's it's brilliant.
That's what I love. This John Layman and Rob Gilroy are so good for this. But yeah, he then stuck in this fantasy world, and it's been taken over by a necromancer who basically can bring vegetables to life and use them as evil weapons.
Yeah,
that's really what it is.
Basically, that's it. And so there's like a band of them, right? They're going to try and stop the grocery Mansa. And obviously, inevitably, we know that Puyo is the last chook standing, and he. Well, there's a bit of conjecture at the end. They did say that he was eaten by that dark wizard, but again, you just see that's wrong. He actually tears the skeleton out of him, and that's what really happens. So again, he's indestructible, he's unbeatable, and he's off. And the last page, Scott, was a real. I had to smile when I saw that, because knowing Image Comics and knowing fellow creators on that line, we have that last page of Puyo onto his next mission with Rick and Michonne in front of him, and Carl as well with The Walking Dead.
That's it.
Absolutely brilliant.
And those walkers are nowhere. They're no fight for Puyo. He'll kick their ass. That's no problem.
Yeah. So very much a comedic book. I did like the humour. There is a particular style to the humour, isn't it? Isn't there? And I love these references with we get Lord of the Rings. What was it? God of the Rings. We have. Yeah. I love the appearance of Dorothy and Toto. I saw that towards the end. Yeah. Do you know who's the blue dude? Who's the guy next to them? Is he someone that we're meant to know, or?
No, I think so. You get the selection, and it's a selection of warriors pulled from different dimensions to represent, all these different warriors. So he's meant to be like a space character. He's meant to be almost like a Adam Strange kind of character.
Okay, right. Yeah.
But yeah, you get all kinds.
Yeah.
Of different characters, which I think is fantastic. I mean, like you said about the jokes. There's a bit at the beginning when they first go into the fantasy world, and you've got two, I assume to be hobbits, crossing a bridge.
Yes, yeah.
And it says Troll Bridge. Prepare to be criticised.
Yeah, exactly. I like those little signs. There's another one about lawyers later on as well, which is pretty funny. But yeah, a really nice romp and well contained. It is a one shot. You have chosen one shots here, Scott. I can only imagine you enjoy. Are you a big fan of John Layman, or how did this issue grab you?
Yeah, no. I'm a big fan of Chew. I found Chew. I came across the first issue or the first collection when Image were doing their first volumes at a reduced price. So I remember grabbing Chew and thinking, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And just being hooked, and like so I've been trade waiting on it. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
But I've got the full collection, and it's a great series. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's got sort of like vampires in. It's got gangsters in. It's got vegetables. It's got ghosts. It's brilliant. And like you say, John Layman's humour is just, it hits my mark.
Yeah.
It's just so sort of surreal, and
It's just unexpected.
Daft.
Yeah, it's unexpected,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, I had no idea these carrots were going to come out of the ground. I mean, you probably did if you followed Chew, but just the absurdity of it all, and and you got asparagus and snow peas and all that sort of stuff. It's really crazy. I never expected Chew to be this quirky, but I'm assuming this is the sort of thread that flows through the 60-issue run as well. Yeah. I mean, this is just John Layman. Yeah. And the artwork is actually, we've got to mention the artwork as well. I really think that this kind of suited, obviously, it suits John Layman's storytelling. It's not your David Finch, or anything like that. It's kind of animated, like cartoon, like in a good way. Yeah.
It really is. I think Rob Gilroy's art is spot on, and he is, a lot of those jokes that appear in the background and stuff is him. They're a true partnership on this. Like this isn't like John Layman writing and he just came across Rob Gilroy. These are friends that you can tell have got a similar sense of humour. They've created this together, and they were probably laughing themselves silly like writing this. And it's like Chew is daft, and it's got a real sort of a thread, a sense of humour that runs through it all.
Yeah.
But it's all in purpose of the story. So there's an actual story, and they're trying to get to a defined ending. And the thing I'd say about Chew is it is funny and it's incredible and it's actually quite action packed, but it's also really heartfelt. You get to love the characters, and there are some heartbreaking moments in that series that you just don't expect.
Right.
So when they're able to do these sort of like one shots, because there's a couple of others. I think there's at least two other Poyo. There's one called Secret Agent Poyo, which I think I've got as well.
Yeah.
It's their chance to let loose of like, okay, we can be as imaginative as we want, and we're going to go crazy. So
and imagine a bit of relief as well. Like, just we can let the valve off and just have fun with it. Because a lot of one of the things I took away from this and with Poyo, there's and I mean this in a good way as well, is that there's no real explanation for stuff. I mean, it kind of summed it up when this wizard says, in truth, Poyo is one badass motherfucking bird, like, and that's it. It just, okay, how is he so good? How is he so strong? Don't worry, you don't need to know. He's just good at what he does. He's got this aura around him, I think, which is really funny.
Well, this is the thing. In the series, Poyo becomes a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, where he saves them on several of occasions.
Oh, okay.
And so they sort of like, they have to do away with that because they're a bit like, oh, okay, well, Poyo can just save them every time they get into trouble.
Yeah.
And so about halfway through the series, I think it's about 30, 35 issues in, they have a load of trouble and someone says, well, where's Poyo? And it just flashes to like a double-page spread of Poyo fighting some mythical monster somewhere else on a different plane of reality.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, he's not available.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, there's no explanation as to why he's there. He's just like, he's not available. Don't worry about it.
He's just in demand. I mean, they take it one step further with this issue, I guess, because you get that sense of like, he's never available. He's off doing something else. So. Yeah, really interesting. Again, I'm looking at just quickly what confused me, and again, it's this kind of confusion / who cares? Who cares about the details? When the wizard's recounting the story to the king, and he tells that Poyo's eaten by the grocery mancer. I don't know what the purpose was for that, because maybe just to set it up to say that, hey, that's a lie. You actually beat him. But yeah, that took me for a bit. I mean, Poyo launches himself into the castle, basically like a bomb. The rest, Dorothy, the wizard, and that Adam Strange guy come in, and they say Poyo being eaten, but that's not true at all. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of just absurdity, which is a lot of fun. But it's that's a good book to take on a desert island, Scott.
It is. Oh yeah, I recommend Chew, and it's a good, like I say, it's a good release of humour.
Yeah. In sharp contrast to that, we have your number 3. So we're just going to go through these the honourable mentions quite broadly. We have brilliant. We have Moon Knight, of course. We have one of the Warren Ellis issues, and we have its issue 4 called Sleep.
Yes.
And sorry, Scott, can I trouble you for the credits for this one?
Yeah, so the credits for the book is it's written by Warren Ellis, drawn by Declan Shelvey, and colours by Geordie Belair. And I want to emphasise that the colours by Geordie Belair because
she's brilliant.
She's amazing. She's in my top 2 favourite colorists for comics. I think her work is outstanding.
Well, for this particular issue, it's funny. It was I can't remember, ages ago. It was on Twitter. Geordie Belair was talking about this issue, and it's a sign of obviously an artist in their own rights. She's very critical of herself, but she was saying there's one page here, that huge splash page of that crazy fungal deity. She was like going on about, I could have done it better. It was it's not how I really wanted it. You know, she was pressed for time. I'm looking at it thinking, geez, this is bloody brilliant. You know?
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm looking at it now and thinking, I've no idea how it's incredible.
Yeah.
I think the art in this. I mean, this whole run, just to quickly, I know hopefully you're going to get to it and cover the whole run, but this whole run as a 6-issue series is. It's a statement of intent for Moon Knight. Like each issue is almost like a different genre. You know, you've got some action in there. You've got espionage. You've got horror. All kinds of things. Like Ellis is brilliant at this kind of thing. And these are such a team. Like Ellis, Shelvey, and Belair. So good.
They are
this is
very good.
This is top of their game kind of stuff.
This is and this is my favourite depiction. I mean, not only this issue, this whole run of Mr. Knight, and let's face it, Warren Ellis he defined Mr. Knight, didn't he? The new kind of look of Moon Knight, and he's so deadly in this series. It's fantastic. Yeah. We did an ISLA RA not long ago with Looney Josh, and we went through. It was actually issue 5, the issue right after this, Scott, and we went through that as one of his top 2 ISLA RA books, and that was the one where he was stuck in the apartment building making his way up. Really cool stuff. But here, this is a doozy in itself, isn't it? Before we get into the nutshell, just off the bat, I wanted to say, you're talking about Geordie Belair's colours. By default, the inverse of that, I think, is fantastic, which is the white, where she doesn't colour at all. And by not colouring Mr. Knight at all and having all those creases done by Declan Shelvey, he just pops out of the page, and he's almost this otherworldly kind of figure. But it's absolutely brilliant.
It's such a good choice, and that's the thing about this whole series. That they do a lot of. DC do it at the moment. They do what they call their noir series. So they'll do all their books in like a black and white, just so you can focus in on the art. But this is a book that is defined by the team, the writing, the art, and the colour. Especially this issue for me. It's just such a combination.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so, in a nutshell, how would you describe this little tale? It's again a one shot.
Yeah, so each of these episodes, each of these issues was a one shot, leading almost to an overreaching final. In this book, Mr. Knight is approached by a scientist who is doing work into sleep and dream, and he is asking for help because each of his patients or each of his participants are going insane. They're all having the same nightmare and going insane. So Mr. Knight, Mooney, is going to spend the night there and he's going to investigate. And what he finds takes him into the realm of dream. And he finds, without a doubt, he finds out why these people are suffering.
A very, very horror-based as well, isn't it? Like when he walks into that dark, empty room, a high shot of the perspective there, and obviously it goes all surreal after that. I wanted to touch upon just at the beginning here. You mentioned Dr. Skelton, who's the guy that approaches Mooney. He has some ties with Dr. Peter Alraine, which we know is from all the way back in Volume 1, the 1980 run by Munch. And he's the brother of Marlene, and he did those tests on the villain that was to become Morpheus. So Moon Knight has had a little bit of dealings with, dream, dream villains and issues and stuff. So that's a connection, and I like how Ellis connects that to the history of Moon Knight by using our raft.
Oh yeah. I think that's why Ellis is so clever, and that's why I think this series was so successful. I think actually, if you could take every issue, there is a connection. Every issue of this series has a connection to that original run.
Yes.
And whether it be in heavy tone or even more direct like this, just to go completely off track, but even like the issue before this, issue 3 about the ghosts, there's an issue very, very similar, or it has a tone about a bunch of punks and a music box in the original run. So it's,
yes, yeah, you're right.
So there's things like that I think that's why I love this run so much, that it made me run to my sort of, at that point, the Essential Collections, and I'm running through going, oh God, I've seen this, where's this from? So it was amazing.
I think that for any Mooney fans, any loonies out there, it is a nod towards all the fans, and it's always appreciated by fans when they know the writers are thinking about the character in that sort of depth. And Warren Ellis obviously does it here. So as Mooney asks Khonshu to put him to sleep, we get this totally whacked out, not unlike what we're seeing here out in the cosmos here, Scott.
It looks, it's looking a bit familiar, to be honest. It's
mushrooms, fungus everywhere. I love Shelby's costume of Moon Knight. The armoured one. I love that as well. It was featured. It was so popular, I guess it made its way to that Hasbro toy figure, Legends figure, which we reviewed a while ago. And there's just a lot of madness here, and he comes across as Spectre, no pun intended. And again, that horror element of the guy. He's got fungus or mushrooms coming out of his eyes, and and we find basically the reason why there's a bit of a smell in the room, and the reason why people are going insane, and what's that down to, Scott?
Well, but basically we find that the very first patient or subject that this doctor had a genetic disorder that, when combined with his dream or sleep chemical. It killed him. He actually died in a dream sleep state. Yeah. And then from that, whilst his body has been decaying under the floorboards, all the other people in the building have been breathing in his spores. He's been mushrooming, and they've been dreaming the spores.
How disgusting is that? That's such a cool idea, but it's so like, we
said before about the within Chew, there's no explanation.
Yeah.
Things just sort of happen. One of the great things I like about this issue in particular, and there's a couple of others actually, it happens again in 5, is that it starts with this guy has made contact, this doctor has made contact with Moon Knight through Detective Flint, we find. So you go, okay, I'll accept that. And then, but the fact this guy, he knows that body is in the room.
I know, yeah.
So he doesn't really take Moon Knight serious. He's just sort of, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this because someone suggested it.
Yeah.
But then at the end of it, we find the body, and Moon Knight gives explanation, and that's it.
That's it, isn't it? It's so abrupt, isn't it?
It just ends. In many issues, they'd be like, okay, well, we're gonna have a picture of him being taken away by the police, or a fight or whatever. But it's amazing.
It's quite jarring, really. I had to double take and look at the next page and go back and look at this. Is that it? Is that it? Yeah, okay, that's it. And again, the artwork here by Shelby, the depiction of the spores, almost like splotches of paint or ink that he uses with little drawings of the spores in the air. It really gives a sense of this murkiness, which is really fantastic. And we always get again we get the expected violence from Mr. Knight as well. So when he first finds out what's going on, and we don't know yet ourselves, he just smashes out of the room and he has a go at the guy, Dr. Skelton, and there's an awesome picture here. I know it's violent, I shouldn't say awesome, but there's an awesome picture where he smashes his head against the floor with a downward punch. Just absolutely brilliant. Shelby is he was at the top of his game here, and actually, funnily you mentioned about Geordie Belair. I found particularly in this issue the colouring and maybe the inking was done slightly different. It just had a different feel to it. Did you gather that compared to the other issues?
Yeah. I do. I think really what I like about this issue is, and what the reason I chose this one, because like you said about the difficulty of having to make that choice. Each issue is really is very much its own story. And the great thing about Shelby is he's almost like an art director. Like he's a real director. If you'd set issue 5, the panels and the way that the angles and the art is directed to look like an action film.
Yeah.
And this is directed to be a horror film, as you say. And they've actually done the colours and the inking to represent that. The front page of the issue is he's gone to Odinburger, which I love. And it's so mundane, but then the whole conversation in the Moon Knight limousine, which I think I've really missed. I think it was a great idea.
Yeah.
The Moonmobile. Is so dark, and the shading and the shadow is done to be a horror film. It's done, the panel layout and everything.
Yes.
But it remains, the colouring is muted. It remains relatively mundane throughout until Moon Knight falls asleep.
Yes.
And then it just goes mental, and the colours are off the page.
They
crazy.
are crazy. And oh god, it's so funny because otherworldly, you're looking at mushrooms and fungus and stuff, and it really does have that kind of element, doesn't it? And yeah, you're right, Geordie Belair, a lot of splotches. I love the highlights of the pink and the reds coming out of the green and the blues, so you get these really contrasting, vibrant colours coming out. So really top stuff here. I'd be happy to have this as my Desert Island book as well, Scott.
I think, yeah, it's a class, and this isn't just if I was to, this series, it's not just a classic Moon Knight series. This is a classic comic book. I think this is comics done at their best. Every issue of this 6-issue series is a team of artists at the top of their game. It's fantastic, and even non-Moon Knight fans should read this book.
Yeah. I mean, and it does set itself apart from other runs in that Warren Ellis distinctly chose to do one-offs, like single issues for the 6 runs. So it is definitely a memorable run. But brilliant choice here, Scott. Brilliant. So those are the 2 honourable mentions. Happy to have a Moon Knight comic in that one, and of course Chew with Poyo was a fun read, and I'm actually glad that you raised that one. As mentioned with other things, look, these are your island books, so there's no rate. I'm assuming you're rating this 5 out of 5, both of them. All
4 of these are a big high five.
Yeah, I mean, you've whittled it down from God knows how many comics, so they've got to be top tier, don't they?
Yeah.
Look, before we get into your final 2, and we're getting to the big 2, so to speak, for your books. Look, we're still here on the raft, and let's go somewhere else. I mean, I know that you have the power of the Beyond.
Yeah, can we?
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, it's just Anubis. He's giving me a funny look at the moment, and I'm not sure how he's feeling, because I'm not. We've been talking about Khonshu and Poyo, and I don't think he's got a sense of humour about things. So I think we might best to move on.
He's looking a bit suspicious. Oh, look, I see in the distance there, Scott. I mean, you've got better eyesight than me. I think that's Norrin. Hang on, one sec. Hey, Norrin, over here. Oh, here he is.
Bloody hell, he moves fast, doesn't he? He moves quick.
Yeah, he does. Hello, Norrin. Hi, this is Scott. He's a Beyonder. I'm Ray. I'm just a high priest.
My service spares my world.
That's a high polish. That's a high polish you've achieved there. Very nice.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez, I wonder what wax you use. It's really good. Look, Norrin. Scott and I were just wondering. I mean, Scott can do it. He's a Beyonder, but he. He's being polite. So, would you be able to whisk us away? We've got 2 more books to discuss. So, we'll need to get back to Earth post-haste. So, I think...
You remind me of her.
Oh, great, cool. Scott, hop aboard on the surfboard.
Okay, this could be a first. I've never surfed before, so I might have to hold on a little bit.
All right, I'll head at the back there, at the back of the boat. All right, we're all on. Yes, Norrin, great, thank you.
Take joy in the last few hours you have left.
All right, okay. Scott, hold on. We're going to head back to Earth to review your final 2.
Okay, off we go.
Hey there everyone, I'd like to tell you about the YouTube channel I Am Your Target Demographic. If you're a fan of comics, we have plenty that you'll enjoy over there, including a series called Heroes Like Us that explores comic characters of all sorts of different identities. And we even have a series that defines words that are used in nerd culture that you may not know what they mean. So you can check us out by heading to YouTube and searching I Am Your Target Demographic, or look up IAYTD on any social media outlet.
Hello, welcome back, Loony listeners. We are back on planet Earth, having been up high in outer space with Anubis and having hitched a ride from the Silver Surfer. Scott, are you okay? You're not jet lagged or anything like that?
No, I'm alright. I'm a bit queasy. That re-entry was a little rough, but I think we're okay.
Yeah, the re-entry, I mean, there were problems with, with us bursting into flames, but that's fine. You are a Beyonder, so I think you put us in a little bubble, and we managed to make our way nice and safe. We are actually in Gotham City at the moment. I don't know if you recognise this, Scott. We are up high on the roof here. Yep. Does this look familiar to you by any chance?
It does. We've gone from cosmic. We've gone from cosmic down to street level now. So it's a bit rough though, isn't it? I'm glad we're up here on the roof, because I wouldn't want to be down there. It's a bit rough down in the Gotham alleys. No, if I'm honest.
Oh, exactly. There are plenty of criminals down there. If only Moon Knight was here, but he's not. He's in New York. We are in Gotham City, and the reason why we are here, Scott, is because your big number 2 ISLA RA book that you have revealed is Shadow of the Bat. Let me just pull up the issue here. Sorry, I had it in my little backpack while we went into re-entry, so I'm just going to have to rustle around in there.
It's not singed, is it? It's all right.
No, it's okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, how about you? Can you give us the credits for this one, Scott?
Yeah. So it's Batman Shadow of the Bat number 13. Mm-hmm. The story is called The Nobody. It's written by Alan Grant. Artist is Norm Brayfogle, and colorist is Adrian Foy.
Now we're going to really get into this, Scott. This is a really good issue. I myself haven't read much of Batman. I think I mentioned to you, out of your 4 books, Moon Knight was the only one I really had read. But I really enjoyed this one. This was a very touching story. Alan Grant did a lot of good work. When was it released? There's a lot of 90s references here, in looks, I mean.
Yeah, this is June 1993.
93.
So it's...
Okay, I can tell the vintage by the ponytails on the yuppies.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
But this was a cracker of a read, and like I said, very touching. How do you want to go about this? Shall we go through page by page?
Yeah, we'll go through.
I'm happy to.
There's a lot to discuss in this issue. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss.
Okay. Let's go briefly, just page by page, and then we can get into the discussion. So, look, let's take a page each, and I'll kick us off. So we basically start in Gotham City, where we are now, but down on the streets, and there is a homeless man who kind of comes out of the shadows and bumps into a yuppie or a businessman who's very angry, and unfortunately he finds a bit of blood smeared on his suit, and that has come from the homeless man. And the homeless man goes to Bruce Wayne's building and demands that he sees Bruce Wayne under threat of a gun to the security guard.
Yeah, so I mean, it then cuts to Bruce Wayne in his rather swanky office up on the penthouse by the look of it. Mm-hmm. And the security contact him to say that there's this gentleman, he's very agitated, he's got a gun, and he wants to see you. And Bruce Wayne says, okay, be careful, but bring him up and we'll deal with him. Mm-hmm. He comes into the room and they actually apprehend him, but before he's able to be taken away, he says to Bruce Wayne, you don't understand, I need to talk to you, it's for your best. What do you want everybody to know where you were at 4 a.m. this morning? And Bruce looks a little shocked.
He does it. He's kind of caught on that he potentially may be in trouble here. So he catches on to this, And he asks everyone to leave the room, that he'll take care of it. And so it's him and the homeless man, the nobody, I guess. And the guy reveals that he knows that he's Batman, but he also that he's hurt as well. So he kind of shakily sits down on one of the armchairs, and with blood again smeared on Bruce Wayne, he kind of has to get something off his chest. Otherwise, Batman's days of crime fighting are over, basically.
Yeah, so it jumps to the next page is it's almost like it's a single page splash. Really, it's sort of saying, Bruce Wayne saying, well, don't I recognise you from last night? And it's the explanation that the previous night Batman was taking on Johnny Zero and his boys when they were robbing what appears to be called the Blue Heron restaurant. So Batman was in a gun. Well, he wasn't, but they were firing at Batman, and he is about to take on the thugs.
And he does with great aplomb. He manages to beat them, evade bullet shots, get off a few punches himself, and one of them he punches a villain or a thug onto a sleeping homeless man who was the nobody that we've been introduced to. This startles the gentleman, and he kind of berates Batman for kind of interrupting his sleep, saying, "This is not Madison Square Garden, what are you doing? Can I get a little sleep?"
So it sort of continues. I like the fact that Batman says, "You have a problem?"
Yeah, exactly.
He says, "What's it matter? Who cares? I'm just a nobody." He carries on drinking, and Batman flies away. But back in the office, he admits that seeing him, swinging away into the night sky, he hated him for it, because it showed how confident and reassured he was, is who he was, and he's just a drunk out on the street. Yeah, and then we get a bit of a short history, tragic kind of history of the gentleman, how he was a loving father and husband, it seems, but due to a terrible hit-and-run accident, he had to identify the bodies of his daughter and wife, which kind of made him plummet down a dark hole, and he kind of lost the local business which he had set up as well with his wife, so that kind of turned him to a man on the drink and homeless on the streets. Yes, and he continues his story to say that he, whilst wandering the streets and after first being encountered with Batman, he sees him again going into the Gotham coal depot and swinging into action to take on Johnny Zero again. And is Johnny Zero, has he been a regular villain or anything like that, just as aside? No, I don't think so. Okay. It's not one I recognise. I think it's probably like, if he is, it's very, C, D, E level. Okay. down the alphabet there somewhere. Yeah. So anyway, Batman crashes through. He kind of startles Johnny Zero, but Johnny Zero manages to pull a lever of coal to kind of fall on Batman, and while Batman is trying to regain himself, Johnny Zero grabs an iron hook on a chain and swings it, manages to actually lodge it into the cowl, and dislodges it from Batman's face. And we see that the nobody, the homeless man, had followed Batman, and he's at the window where Batman turns around and reveals his face of Bruce Wayne. Yeah, and Bruce ducks for cover, taking out Johnny Zero with a well-placed batarang, and replacing his mask. But as you say, the homeless guy has now seen it, and he recognises, "I knew who you were right away." He says, I like the face. Don't let beat it though. Gotham's richest playboy by day, the Batman by night. So he's letting him know now that he knows he is Batman. And Bruce Wayne tries to put him off. He says, "Oh, you're delirious. You're drunk. Don't be silly." And he says, "No. You've got to listen. What do you think I did with that knowledge that you're Batman?" Yes. Which kind of, now we're kind of on edge as to what exactly did happen. So we see that what the nobody does is decides, well, he was thinking of blackmailing Batman directly, but he just knew that would probably end badly with Batman obviously beating him, in the sense, hunting him down. So he decides to go the other way and decides to sell this information to some of the criminals who might be interested in this knowledge. So he goes to Mac's bar,
and he's immediately kind of shooed away by a lot of the locals there. But one of them, Doc Creasy, decides to listen to what this man has to say.
Yeah, he takes him aside and just says, "Okay, well, I'll listen to what you've got to tell me." And he says, "So you know who Batman is? What are you expecting for it?" And the homeless guy says, $50,000, $100. Yeah, no, it could be worth millions to the Joker. And the guy sort of agrees with him.
Yeah, and but he says, "I'm not going to really pay you because you'll just waste that on drink." And he shows his signature knives in his inside pockets, and he says, "You'll give us what we want to hear, and we won't have to pay you anything. And if you do that, we'll let you walk out on your own accord. Otherwise, you'll know why I'm called the Doc." And the nobody tries desperately to get anything. How about $1,000? Nope. How about $100? Nope. How about even the price of the drink? And Doc Creasy is not hearing any of that. So he decides not. He wants to. He doesn't want to play ball.
So in response to that, Doc Creasy is basically saying, just go, dump his body, make it look like an accident. But the homeless guy, last ditch effort really, I suppose, is what he's after. Fights back, fights out, and tries to run for it, and gets a knife in his back for his troubles. And they actually say, it won't look like an accident anymore. Oh well.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Oh, stuff that thing. Yeah. Just dump his body now. And anyway, he's a hobo, so no one will care. So Creasy gets his henchmen to take away the body, and so they just dump him in an alley. And the poor fella is bleeding out. He's got rats around him, stray dogs, and he says, funnily enough, that it might have been the alcohol, maybe, that kept him alive. But he manages to regain his feet after a few hours.
And he starts his journey back. He sees Batman swinging out as the sort of sun rises, and he makes that decision then that he's got to redeem himself. There's only one thing he can do really now, and that sort of takes us full circle really to the start of the issue with him falling out of the alleyway, and he says that Doc Creasy is going to auction off this secret identity that night to the highest bidder. Yeah.
So Batman goes on his way, fully suited up, and he makes his way towards, in a really nice splash page here, you're seeing him in the full costume and in full light. He flies up, flung upwards into the sky, and he makes his way towards the auction.
Yeah, and so then we actually get a news anchor stating that millionaire Bruce Wayne has actually left the city, and it cuts back to the auction, and all these different people are doing like a teleconference. Really, they're all tuning in, and there's the last one introducing to him, "What's up, Doc?"
Yeah, and it's none other than the Joker, who can never be trusted, I guess. So he kind of completes this auction via conference, and so Doc Creasy asks that the bidding be opened, and we see outside at the place called the Bright Spot where the auction is being held, Superman is just surveilling the area, and he notices a couple of Joker's lieutenants outside.
Yeah, and we find actually, quite simply, that Doc Creasy is about to get a dose of his own medicine, because the Joker says, "I tell you what, I'll take it for free. Your security's a bit rubbish. Yep. Here are my henchmen, and you're going to come with us."
Yep. Never trust the Joker. Don't involve him with anything. So they take Doc Creasy away, and they kind of suppress the other people inside the Bright Spot under gunfire, and as they get into the car, that's when Batman takes his opportunity and starts to assault the thugs, and so throws a few flares, he throws a few punches, and it's all on.
Yeah, and he manages to take a lot of them down, and Doc Creasy's about to stab him in the back when one of Joker's goons actually thinks the whole thing's been a setup, and so shoots Doc Creasy in the back.
And Again, we get some nice action here. Batman takes on the big thug, because he is quite big, it seems, but he's got a bit of blood on his mouth, Batman, as he gets punched by him, but he just smiles, and then he goes to town on the guy, and he beats him pretty easily. When the police arrive, Batman is up on the rooftops again, just looking down on them, and he just thinks to himself, well, I actually didn't need to employ his strategy of... he actually had a rubber mask on beneath his cowl, so he takes that off. Wasn't needed at all because Doc Creasy unfortunately was killed in the melee.
And so the final page is, I didn't really mention before, but the nobody's asked him a simple question of like, so why do you do it, Batman? And as he asks the question, he passes away. Bruce closes his eyes, and you get a short monologue explaining why Batman feels that he has to be Batman.
Yeah. So really, towards the end there, Scott, it was a really touching issue, actually. I guess I wasn't thinking too much about it, what happened to the nobody, but the way that Breyfogle lays it out with the nobody passing away, and then at that last page, Batman just high on the top, and then it's saying, I do it for the weak and the scared and the oppressed. I do it for the victims, the innocent, the abused. I do it to try to end the suffering, and I do it for the nobodies. So a really, really cracking read here, Scott. First off, why did you choose this one?
It's one of those books. It's early 90s. It's when I was getting into comics, and this Shadow of the Bat was one of the series I started to pick up. Quite later on, a bit later on actually. It was sort of in the 30s, I think, when I started getting it, and I started to get back issues. And when I picked this up, I was in my teens, so this issue I've got, it's still in pretty good condition actually, but I've had it for years. It was I picked it up quite cheap, and it was one of those, when you first read it, that I think it made me think, when you're a kid and when you're younger, and as you get a bit older, sort of, Batman he's action packed, he's a badass, he can do all this stuff, he's amazing. But this was one of those issues, one of those first issues that really made me think about why. You ask the question, you go, yeah, why do you do it? Like, there must be easier ways of doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's this question's been asked a number of times, and had slightly variances on the same answer of why does Batman do this? Go out every night. But this was the first issue that really, for me, raised that question, and I just like the fact that it's held in a one-issue story, and it doesn't end on like it's not a happy ending. It ends on a quite somber note.
It does, yeah.
Because for Bruce Wayne Batman, this is almost like a failure.
Yes.
On many levels. Like, he couldn't save this nobody. But there's also so much to it. I mean, the art in it is actually really good. I think it's let down a little bit by 90s style colouring. But there's so many pages where, like you say, that page that going back where you get the nobody's backstory, you get his origin. Of how things just fell apart for him, and it's really well laid out. Of just it is just tragic, and you do feel it. Like it's
I tend to agree as well. And one of the points, like you talked about the 90s colouring, what I think that this was written in the 90s, but I think what works for it is that it, like, I don't know, some of the 90s comics can tend to be too bogged down with dialogue and text, and it can be quite. I mean, I'm actually reading a Scarlet Witch series in the 90s. I think it was done by Abnett and Lanning. There's just so much, actually, dare I say, waffle in it, and a lot of the 90s had that. This one actually ticks along quite nicely, and as you say, with his backstory as well, it's all succinctly done, and it just the pacing just keeps on going. And so what I think is that it really helps with the story, particularly considering, like, when I first saw the ponytail of that blonde yuppie at the first page, I was thinking to myself, oh gosh, this is going to be like a long, dense 90s comic. But it wasn't. It was good. It was, it was well paced, I thought.
Well, and I think, this is where, like you say, you could even reduce the dialogue even further, couldn't you? Because some of the panel layouts and the art actually tell the story really well. I mean, I don't really know much about Norm Breyfogle. know him as a known artist, but it's not all fantastic. It's not all A grade art, but some of the panel layouts and stuff and the storytelling is really good.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I like the fact that this homeless guy who has got nothing, he is a nobody. He actually has reached the bottom of that barrel as far as he's concerned. He's actually facing up to Bruce Wayne, the richest man in the city, and saying like, "Why do you do this?"
Yeah, and it makes it more.
Why do you put yourself on the line?
Yeah, and it makes it all the more tragic as well because he is a homeless man and he really is looking for a break. He's got this bit of information, so you actually empathise for him when he does use it and go to the criminals because you can understand. Like he's had a rough trot. I mean, although he's going against our hero, we do know that he's obviously approached Bruce. Anyway, we see him at the beginning, but he's stooping to those lows because he really has nothing and. It's quite sad, and unfortunately with street level life, it doesn't go to plan because you have these creeps like Doc Creasy just wanting everything for free, and as you said, funnily enough, the Joker one-ups him and gets the better of him.
Yeah, there's some stuff in this book that's like you said, it's 90s. Some of it's a bit, it feels quite 90s in many respects, but there's also that there is that layered thing of. You start to realise that actually the criminal underworld is tiered. And this guy's at the bottom of this. He is the homeless guy. He is the sort of the nobody. He goes to Doc Creasy, who, a little bit further up the tree, but the Joker's at the top, and he actually uses exactly the same intimidation and methods, but on a grander scale. And that's it. Say that you're not the biggest dog in the yard, and you're going to get kicked for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite interesting to show, and that's why I think this is quite a clever issue in some respect. And the fact of the matter is, though, that the nobody, he doesn't get his answer.
Yeah.
He dies before he gets his answer. We get the answer. We know why Batman does it.
Yeah, it just makes it all the more sadder, doesn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's that thing. He never gets the answer. But I also feel that the tone of this, I mean, maybe not as morbid, but. It feels sort of in keeping with almost like Batman the Animated Series. They could have done something similar to this, and it would have. I think if this had been a story that they're told in Batman the Animated Series, I think you'd have been looking at like a really well known top class episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On par with like Heart of Ice and those sorts of things.
It's
just because.
Sorry.
No, it's just because I think it's so clever. I mean, there's one thing that I find quite interesting is, he says this thing at the end, and it's, I think with better knowledge of Batman now, he looks remorseful and sad at the end. He says, I do it for the weak and the scared and the oppressed, I do it for the victims, the innocent, the abused, I do it to try to end the suffering and do it for the nobodies. It's great that I think that is part of it. I do honestly think that's part of it. But on the page, literally the page before that, when he is fighting with the thug, and he gets, Batman gets a great meaty hook to the face. Yeah. When he comes back, he's smiling.
Yeah.
Like Batman is grinning, and so there's always that part of me that thinks, you say that, you do say you're doing it for the weak, but there's a part of you that's a bit masochistic. You're doing this, because you've got to a level of enjoying it, and it's an interesting study of. Batman.
Yeah, look, it's very. You can draw the parallels with Moon Knight there as well. Like he, in your book, the other book of issue 4, he says that I do protect the travellers of the night. I try to keep them safe. So he tries to protect the innocent, but he has no compunction to stop any violence. When he wants to. So he punches Dr. Skelton, he slams him against the desk, There's a level, you'd imagine there's a level of enjoyment as well, and that again just adds layers to him as well as Batman here as well. We see that there's a level of enjoyment that he has in the, I don't know, maybe the thrill of it, maybe the physicality of it. But yeah, we see that next page where he does have empathy for all the people that he fights. Yeah.
I put this in. I struggled between. There were two things I really struggled between for this. There was 2 Batman stories I really wanted to put in. and this one won out more because of the nostalgia I have for it, and obviously it's when I was a kid and when I first read it. Mm-hmm. But there's another version of this story, really, done by I forget now, but it's against Lieber Mayo's art. It's called Batman Noel.
Okay.
It's a Christmas carol told via Batman.
Oh wow!
It's really good. And like the Ghost of Christmas Past is what do I think now? The Ghost of Christmas Present is Superman, and the Ghost of Christmas Future is the Joker. Now they're not actual ghosts, but they're used in that way. Yeah. And it's the story of Joker, and Joker's using this character who is the Bob Cratchit of the story, and he's sort of like, he then gets used as bait by Batman, who is a nobody. This guy's a nobody. He lives in a really downtrodden, crappy apartment with a son, and he's having to take on small like courier jobs from the Joker just to make ends meet. Like that's his only option.
Yeah.
And he makes a box job of it, so he knows that the Joker's coming after him, but he also knows Batman's coming after him. So it's sort of like, what does he do? Yeah. And the end of the story is Joker comes and takes this, like, tries to kidnap his son, and Batman intervenes and beats up the Joker, as you expect. Mm-hmm. But this is an angry Joker. Like, the point of the story is Batman as Scrooge is, throughout the story, he's been angry. He's so browbeaten and cynical about criminals. He's like, no, they're all disgusting. They're all, these nobodies. They just do whatever they can to make money. That's all they care about. Right. And at one point, like Superman says to him, "But that's easy for you to say as a billionaire." And you think at the end of it, he's about to beat the crap out of this guy, and it cuts to the next panel, and the police are taking away the Joker, and then you see that this nobody, this Bob Cratchit character, actually now has been offered a job at Wayne Industries, quite a low tier job, but offered as a job as a sort of a porter or something, as a and has been given that chance to work his way back up.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd like to think that this nobody, this guy, if he hadn't have died, if he'd have got that help, Bruce would have done a similar thing. He would have said, "Well, I can get you a job. I can help you. I can do something else. I don't have to be Batman. I can be Bruce Wayne as well."
Yeah, look, I have no doubt as well. I mean, like, he certainly seemed touched by the guy, and although the guy was almost out there to kind of do him no good, by revealing his secret identity, there is a level of care that Batman has for this guy, and it's just a shame that he did die towards the end. But yeah, it was a good read. I haven't read much Batman. I don't know much about Shadow of the Night as well. But yeah, I mean, I have read Nightfall, the first book, and that was, I think it's around the same time. Is that like in the 90s sometime?
Yes, yeah. That's when you get sort of like slightly crazy Batman, armor-plated Batman.
Yeah, very 90s.
Yeah.
So
Guns and Pouches.
Just call Rob Liefeld. Far out. But yeah, this was a great pick, Scott. So this was your second pick to take with you to Isla Ra if you are stranded on that island. Very good. Look, we're still here on the rooftop. It's all slight.
I'm not sure we should loiter though. It's getting a bit. The sun's going down. I think we don't want to loiter in Gotham City after dark.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to bump into Batman as well. So,
no.
How about? Look, I know that you said you wouldn't, or I know that I'm saying that you shouldn't. But would you be able to whisk us away with your Beyonder powers, Scott, to our final destination?
I can try something. I'll see what I can pull out the bag. Can we just hold on?
All right.
We hold on tight. Let's go.
Hi, this is Dave.
And I'm Stu, and we're from the Signal of Doom.
We're proud members of the Collective, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Okay, right. So here we go. Here we are. What do you think?
Yeah, this is fantastic. And a very interesting venue that you've taken us to, Scott, but I can see the comparisons with the final book that you have mentioned. As we can tell, a few familiar characters running around there in the background. We have your final book here, Scott. Again, it is another DC book, yeah? I mean, it's a Vertigo, Is it a Vertigo? Yeah, it's a Vertigo.
It's branded as Vertigo, but it was originally released as DC.
Okay.
So,
and this is one of the superheroes from DC I really kind of wanted to get into. This is Animal Man, and so we have the Coyote Gospel, and this is I've only got the number 5, Animal Man.
Yes.
And sorry, Scott, again, may I trouble you for the credits for this?
Yeah, so this is Animal Man number 5, written by Grant Morrison, and art by Chaz. I can never pronounce his name. Truog. Truog.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's that? Hazelwood? Someone else? No.
And someone Hazelwood. I was trying to look for the first name. Doug Hazelwood.
Doug Hazelwood.
Art by Doug Hazelwood.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Hang on, actually, before we start here, Scott, I see. So just to paint a picture for you, loonies, we're in some sort of desert here. And it seems to be not your typical universe, your real desert. It seems almost Looney Tuny. So Scott, look, can you pick up that rock over there?
It's not as heavy as it should be, really.
Yeah,
it's quite light.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really really funny, and I can see some dynamite over there. I'm not even worried. So,
yeah, I think we're going to be fine. Whatever happens now, it's all good. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Exactly. So this, when was this released? This looks like another 90s one, Scott. Just from judging.
It's slightly earlier. I think it's.
Okay, it could be earlier.
I think it's late 80s.
Late, okay. Because I've just got the trade here.
Yeah, here we go. 88.
88. Okay. Yeah, and this is a very interesting story here. You'll know why we're here in this desert here, loonies. And again, shall we do a quick rundown, Scott?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's find it. So.
Sorry?
Do you want to start? Do you want to start with the first page?
Oh no, you can kick us off.
Okay.
Yep.
So the first page, we start in the sweltering desert on a highway somewhere in a Death Valley,
yeah.
And we focus in, and there's a truck coming through with 2 passengers, a lorry driver and a hitchhiker that he's picked up, and they are discussing sort of like how they've got to that point. We find out that the hitchhiker, a young woman, she's off to Hollywood to make her name, and the driver's saying, "Well, good luck with that. I'm sort of." Onto a better path. I've been down that path. I'm showing that I'm sort of like one with God now. He's obviously gone down the Christian route.
Yes, and as they hurtle down the highway in a sweltering heat, they're singing along to some tunes on the radio, and a shadowy creature kind of walks in front of their truck. Obviously, with the truck being a big thing, it can't stop in time. And the lady points it out, but it seems all too late as there's a big brump on the front of the truck.
That's it. So they drive over whatever it is, and they literally say, "What was that?" And the driver says, "Don't forget about it. Don't look back. Keep your eyes on the road and don't look back. It's good advice for life." And you find that as they disappear into the distance. There's a figure that's been turned into roadkill, just lying on the road.
Yeah, very graphic. And we see that the figure's still kind of like alive. And what we see further is that it is very much alive, and it is slowly healing itself. So through a long and slow, painful process, its innards and its broken bones and such kind of re-stitched together. And the creature slowly stands up under the hot sun.
And the next page, again, single page splash. Title page, The Coyote Gospel, and we find that this is it is a coyote. It's a coyote. It stood on 2 legs, and it has around its neck a tube or something, sort of, something rolled up.
It's got very goggly eyes as well, which was one of the things that sprung out to me. So I had absolutely no idea what was going on here so far. So this creature, this coyote, seems to have reanimated itself. And anyway, that was a year ago, and we shoot do today, 1 year later, and it seems, again, you might have to help me, Scott, because I'm not too sure of the characters. This is Animal Man here, Billy. Buddy,
Buddy Baker.
Buddy Baker, that's him.
Buddy Baker.
And I understand he's obviously Animal Man. He's very in touch with animal rights and preservation, and so he's chucking out all the meats in the fridge, much to the surprise of, is that his son?
His son, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then, beyond the son, his wife comes in, and he says to her, "I'm getting rid of this because all of this is meat. I think it's time we went vegetarian." And she's a little less than impressed because he's thrown away quite a lot of money's worth of food.
Yes.
And she says to him, "I don't suppose it occurred to you to talk this over with me."
Yes, and so they have a bit of an argument with Buddy talking about just the terrible conditions that animals are in, and you know, such as in the slaughterhouse, turning into groceries. And basically, he's had enough. She is not happy as well. Obviously, it costs money to buy this food, but he goes, "Fine, take the damn stuff. Just don't expect me home for dinner." So he's very much sticking to his beliefs.
Yeah, and so the next page is Animal Man in full costume, soaring across the sky, and he's having a conversation with himself, thinking, you know, he's probably a bit he overreacted a little bit, but he you know, he feels it's very quiet where he is. He loves it when he's flying through the sky.
And then we kind of cut to a roadside with a jeep, and we see the gentleman that we saw at the beginning, the truckie. He seems to be laying some dynamite. He's obviously aged a bit over the 1 year course. He has a gun as well, and he's setting up what seems to be a booby trap. More importantly, though, we get the purpose of what he's doing in the text, and basically he wants to kill the devil. So he's had a run of bad luck as well. He watched, was that his son Billy go under the wheels of a truck? And his best friend, who we mentioned at the beginning, he died, brain damage, unrecognisable. He's had a run of bad luck. He's got cancer. His mother had cancer, and he lost her in March. He lost his job, and the final straw that broke the camel's back was he looked in the newspaper, and unfortunately that lady that he picked up, the hitchhiker, there's something in the article saying that there was a prostitute slain in a drug raid, so she indeed did turn to drugs and prostitution, as he kind of foresaw, but that really kind of it was a last straw for him.
Yeah. So yeah, he's there. He's been hunting down this devil, and he finally sees him. He's got the rifle, and he says, "Sweet Jesus, don't let me miss." So he sees whatever this creature was that he hit a year ago. He sees that there's the sort of like the portent for all of his bad luck. So he takes aim, and just as he's about to squeeze the trigger, the coyote with its goggly eyes sort of turns around and sees it.
Yeah, it's actually quite scary, I thought, with the eyes. But anyway, so he shoots in a very bloodied panel. He shoots the coyote straight through the chest, and the coyote makes a slow fall down a crevice. And we get a description of the terrible journey as it falls down. I mean, it breaks its spine at the outcrop. The second impact on the sides of the crevice, I guess, crushes its skull, unhinges its jaw, snaps both legs, and we see at the end just as a puff of dust as he hits rock bottom, basically blind and quadriplegic.
Yeah, but the guy at the top still believes it's still alive. It seems he sees it's moving, so as it's healing itself at the bottom in great pain, he pushes a rather large boulder, off the side of the cliff, and it hurtles down and lands on the coyote creature.
And we'll get to this, but at this point, and knowing nothing of this issue, Scott, I was thinking this is kind of getting a little comical, a little reminiscent of something.
Yeah.
So anyway, this will make sense later on. So anyway, we cut to the sky, and there's an eagle soaring there, but in the distance we see Animal Man, and as he flies closer, it's kind of interspersed with this hunter, this guy, who is chasing down. He goes down the mountaintop, whatever you call it, and he just wants to make sure that this devil is dead, and he has a magic bullet to do it.
When he reaches the opening panel again, we see Animal Man's coming in to a crossroads, which is clearly over the desert, and the guy has seen that the creature hasn't died, it's still coming back, it's still healing, but he'd forgotten that he'd placed that dynamite and they'd placed a booby trap. He tries to stop the creature from coming, but it's too late, and the bomb goes off. Yeah,
and that's what finally, I guess, catches the attention of Animal Man, that big explosion. So amidst the dust and the rubble, and we see the hunter he survived. Actually, I was surprised. I thought he would have died, but he somehow survived, a bit ragged. And as he slowly, gingerly gets up, he sees a horrible sight, and it is the coyote mangled and half burnt and amputated and stuff, and it's standing there still. So it grows a foot basically as it lumbers forward.
It walks past the hunter, which is interesting because Animal Man has, as you say, seen the explosion and comes into land, and he is approached whilst investigating by the coyote, and for some reason the coyote recognises him as a hero or someone to communicate with, and hands him the rolled up paper from around his neck, and Animal Man begins to read it,
and it's apparently the Gospel according to Crafty. And then there's a real kind of 180 turn here. In the next page, we are brought into what seems to be a very caricatured, Looney Tunesy, cartoony sort of world where milk is floating in the sky. You've got the crescent moon there. You have the North Pole. You have all sorts of weird and wacky anthropomorphic characters. Throwing dynamite, just having fun, chasing around. And amidst that, we have Crafty, and he is the coyote in the desert. Very similar to Wile E. Coyote, and he's chasing something. And as per the Looney Tunes thing, he uses all sorts of weapons to try and catch the Roadrunner, I assume. And anyway, he gets, typical, he gets blasted. Oh, and he gets blasted. But sorry, that was your page. Yeah.
It's funny. He does. He gets blasted. Yep. He not only gets blasted with the gunpowder, and then the cannonball falls back and hits him in the head. So he takes the full force of that. Yeah. But he's decided that enough is enough.
Yes.
And he took himself into the desert, into a lone elevator in the middle of nowhere, and went up to what these cartoon characters consider to be God. And it's a character who sits on a throne with these characters and a paintbrush tipped in red paint.
Yeah, very, very cool here. I can't wait to discuss this. So anyway, so Crafty says, look, I'm happy. Well, this godlike figure says, well, you got to be punished for, for going against what you're meant to do down in the world. And Crafty says, yeah, well, I'm happy to bear any punishment as long as it brings peace to this world. So the godlike figure says, well, you're going to have to basically spend an eternity in hell, and you're going to have to suffer if you want peace amongst the beasts in this world. Crafty says, yep, all right, let's do it. And with a wave of a gigantic paintbrush, Crafty is spun into a vortex, and then into what looks like an abyss, and is awoken as the coyote which we see in the middle of the road, right in front of the semi-trailer, right at the beginning of the book.
And so we get a sort of another thing of like the year he has spent really in the desert, all the pain he has suffered, and the repeated times he has died and come back. And it's each time it's overlaid with the text explaining it, and hoping that he would doing this is that the god would build a better world. And we see that the coyote is looking on as Ant-Man reads through this, hopefully, sort of like, hoping he'll understand. And the final panel, which is a little heartbreaking, is Animal saying, "I'm sorry, I can't read this. It makes no sense to me."
Absolutely. It was, God, this kind of floored me as well. Just the look on the coyote's face, hoping that Animal Man will make sense of, will understand his plight. But as we see the text, it's all gibberish, isn't it? It's crazy. So anyway, while this is happening, the hunter slowly is regaining his senses, and he finds himself behind a rock, hidden away from Animal Man and the coyote, and he has his silver bullet, which is described as having been melted down, I guess, from the crucifix that he had hanging on his neck, around his neck. So it being silver, I guess it is a magic bullet. It will do stuff. So he loads up his rifle and he takes aim at who we call Satan, which we now know is poor Crafty. He's stuck on this world. And with a silver bullet, he shoots Crafty right through the heart.
Yeah, and it's almost the next page is almost wordless, really. Sort of Crafty sees that he's bleeding, but he says it's strange. There's no pain, and he collapses. But as the coyote collapses, so does the trucker. So I did it. I saved the world. And he finally passes out or dies, I think. Yeah,
I was wondering whether he died. I assumed he died. But anyway, in the final page, very touching Animal Man, who actually has a very incidental role in this whole issue. He just watches over Crafty, who's crying, and he's looking at Animal Man, and he slowly passes away, and he lies down crucifix-like on the crossroads, and as it pans up into the sky, we see the puddle of white underneath Crafty is painted in red, and that comes from the paintbrush of Crafty's god. And a very Scott, another touching one actually.
But you said, the thing you said the paintbrush of Crafty's god, but the question is it just Crafty's god? Because he still exists in this universe.
Yeah, absolutely as well, and this is so cool. This is such a cool thing by Grant Morrison, because as well it's very very fourth wall, as well. Is it the artist? Is it the artist for us depicted as as the god there?
Well, this is, and to give some context to this issue, I'm going to give context to this whole thing. Really. I'm a massive Grant Morrison fan, and I know he's done some amazing works that have blown my mind, and he's done some not so great works. I accept that, but everything he's done, Invisibles, Doom Patrol, his Batman run, the X-Men run, everything. I think they're amazing. Even his independent work is really good.
Yeah.
And so this sort of came about. Me reading Animal Man it was, as you say, it's one of those books. I've read all his modern stuff, and I wanted to work backwards. And I did think, well, I'm going to have to go back. I really want to read his first DC stuff. And so I read this, and it's in the series of books. It's actually quite jarring, with it being issue 5, because issues 1 to 4 in themselves, they're an arc. They're quite a closed arc. But the original intent was that actually there'd just be a mini-series. So this came about because Karen Berger came over to Britain in the mid-80s, 86, 87, following the success of Alan Moore in his work on Watchmen and Swamp Thing and all that kind of thing. So he thought, Britain's the place to be. Let's get some more artists and some more writers. So while she's over here, she actually met with Grant Morrison and also Neil Gaiman. And Neil Gaiman obviously brought his Sandman idea, and Grant Morrison brought this idea for... he brought 2 ideas, actually. He brought this, Animal Man, and he brought the idea for Arkham Asylum. And they said, well, Arkham, we're not giving you Batman. Not happening. But we like your idea for Animal Man. And so he was given the opportunity to do 4 issues of Animal Man. And he wanted it to be something different, something that hadn't really been seen. But he wanted to keep it in the context, and he looked at what Alan Moore had done with his early Swamp Thing series, and so he did it. And the first 4 issues are very much a story about animal rights, which sort of continues through the series. But they're a very self-contained story about animal rights, and especially about in things like the makeup industry and the food industry. So he wanted to hit hard on those sort of like social commentary moments. And then as he was finishing off issue 3, they said to him, "We're loving this. You're going to continue. We want you to carry on." And he didn't have a story. He didn't have any ideas. Oh. So in a moment of panic, they sort of said, "Well, don't worry. Just do what you do. Go full bore." So.
Great.
For all intents and purposes, this is the birth. This issue is the birth of of Grant Morrison. Really, it's him.
Oh, wow.
Really being let loose, because those first issues are good. They are really good, but they're very. You can tell they're Alan Moore inspired. Okay. And that sort of thing. And the same thing, weirdly, and you had was it Rick?
Yeah.
Fastball Rick did Sandman 8.
Oh no, that was Dave from the Signal of Doom.
Dave.
Yeah.
So Dave had. So a similar thing happened to Grant Morrison, to Neil Gaiman. He did 7 issues. The 7 issues was to be the Sandman story, and then he was told, "Well, actually, we're going to let you run with it. Go, do whatever you want. We're loving what you're doing." Yeah. And so that issue 8, that the story with Death, was actually a breather, a chance for him to breathe. He actually put that together as a whim, and to allow him to build a story for other things. And like I say, this and that issue 8 really stand alone as
they do. I mean,
as closed things for encapsulating those things, because there's so much in this issue that Grant Morrison revisits repeatedly in future works.
Yeah, right. Well, I think similar, Dave mentioned it on that Isla Ra as well. He's saying that was a turning point really in issue 8. And I guess you've encapsulated it exactly. I mean, that makes sense. And I'll be interested to read 1 to 4 here of Animal Man and to see how this fits in with that, knowing now what you had said about the Alan Moore influence and such. With Animal Man, just for those, i.e. myself, who don't know much about him, is he basically, can he turn into an animal or something, or no?
I think his sort of powers of the reason he took up Animal Man was because he hadn't had an ongoing series for decades. I think his powers are simply he can mimic the powers of any animal. So he never turns into the animal, but they changed that a little bit, I think, in the DC New 52 slightly. But in this version, he can mimic the power, so he can have the flight of a bird, or the speed of a cheetah, or the strength of like a silverback gorilla.
Oh, well, okay, yeah. I mean, this was quite interesting. I did read the forward at the beginning. I've got the trade. And it's mentioned. Grant Morrison talks about it. He does actually a funny forward saying, I'm writing my own forward. I don't have someone. Yeah. But he talks about how Animal Man really likes his animal rights, and Grant Morrison wanted to incorporate that exactly as you said. But we don't get much of him at all, apart from the beginning of this book, where he gets to talk about it a bit with his wife. And I think the strength of this comes in, obviously, Crafty and the tragedy of Crafty as well, but how Crafty's wanting to save his world, and at the same time the Truckee wants to save his world as well. He's got this notion that this is the devil, I don't know. I think it had a lot of layers and complexities to it. Built around a very absurd notion of someone from a Looney Tunes-esque world, because it would be hard to pull off. If you look at it, you go, "Oh God, this is like kids stuff." Why are we talking about this? But he actually succeeds in making Crafty a very likable and tragic figure.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of Crafty is a really sympathetic character in this book. I mean, in this issue, and I think, like you say, you see his frustration as being the coyote in the cartoon world of constantly chasing, but constantly being defeated and constantly getting beaten up. And so, him approaching his God in all capital letters, his creator, and saying, like, right, look, this is madness. We can't keep going on like this. Like, what's got to happen to change this? Is actually like the bravery in that, to step up and ask that question and say, like, what have I got to do to help? And then to say, well, you're going to have to go through an eternity of suffering and I will promise to make this world better. It's crazy. It's incredible, but he is such a sort of sacrificial character.
Yeah. And so you say, obviously, you picked this because you're a big fan of Grant Morrison as well. And this is a turning point, I guess, as you mentioned, from issues 1 to 4. So, I mean, it's a really interesting read. It's a good introduction, I think. I mean, from a first-time reader of Animal Man, it is interesting. It is a nice, solid story. But yeah, I don't get too much of Animal Man in this. But yeah,
I agree. What I would say is, though, that you get flashes of, this is actually, it's weirdly, it's quite an interesting, and it's a good. It could actually, this could be a starting point, a jumping on point. Weirdly enough, because you get a taster of his family life. It gives you a full, enough information to say that he is about animal rights. He wants to become a vegetarian.
Yeah.
You get a slight glimpse of his. We get enough of a glimpse of his powers, but
yeah.
It gives you the tone of this again. He hints at it. I mean, he actually says it explicitly in his introduction to the trade. I've got the trade as well. It says the Coyote Gospel initiated a plot line which was ultimately resolved in Animal Man 26.
Okay.
So there are bits in this that actually get resolved and picked up later on down the line. That this, we talk about this thing, the paintbrush, and this character that sat in the chair, as the artist and stuff. That notion is it comes back and again and again. And I don't want to spoil the whole series because I highly recommend this whole run, the first 26 issues of Animal Man.
I'm going to be reading it. Don't worry.
Yeah, they're incredible. But you get in that 26 issues, including the sort of like the big, as it reaches its big climax that Grant Morrison is building to. There's so many notions and things that he does. He comes back to in things like Final Crisis, in The Invisibles, and even his Batman run. There are things that are in this issue, and if, in perfectly honest, there's a part of me that thinks that actually there's a Grant Morrison continuity in DC.
Like within DC,
that you could take this and everything else he's done within the DC universe, and it exists and even like from this to his Doom Patrol to all the way through to like Final Crisis. And there are notions that come back again and again. Even in later things down the line, in Final Crisis, it's Psycho Pirate that he remembers the pre-Crisis world, and that sort of driven him world, and that's a big driving point in Final Crisis. That's actually in this run,
right?
So the notion of Psycho Pirate being actually a pivotal character in the DC universe is in this run. It comes up again and becomes a really pivotal point in Final Crisis. So from 1988 to like 2008, I think that was when that's like a 20-30 year period to show that that's actually that he has been thinking about those things for all that time. Is incredible, which is why I think Grant Morrison's so good, and it's all here in this issue. I think that's why it's so good. And like I say, it ends with that the depiction of someone dying on the cross for their world, which is really touching. Yeah,
it's very touching. It is. Well, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, just what you're saying now, the level of thought that Grant Morrison brings to it, and to tie it all together. It's great. I mean, I'm going to have to check out the rest of these issues to actually see it. Start from 1 and then go all the way to 26. Yes. I heard doesn't Jeff Lemire do Animal Man as well in some capacity? Yeah,
Jeff Lemire did an Animal. He did Animal Man for 52, the new 52 run. Okay.
Yeah,
and it's good. It's worth checking out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I was interested in Animal Man. I mean, I'm not sure if you remember, Scott. There was one season. There was a TV show called Manimal. I don't know if you've ever. I used to love. I loved that as a kid, but it was only obviously one season, and I never saw it again. About a man who can turn into any animal, and I've always loved that aspect, and so it always intrigued me, Animal Man. So I'm glad that you picked this one. It's really cool. One of the final thing that I want to say about this is. Again, just the contrast between the cartoon and the real, and And Grant Morrison gets really dark here. I mean, it opens up at the beginning about the guy telling her about, you know, getting into prostitution and drugs and dying of AIDS and all that. And we see her later on, a year later, she is slain as a prostitute and had, you know, in a drug raid or something. It gets quite dark, but also the fact that bringing Crafty into our world, you know, and him suffering and being run over and being pecked away by vultures, it's quite graphic and it's quite grisly, actually, to think. I mean, so you get that kind of contrast between that and the fact that this Crafty is basically from another cartoon world. It's a very weird dynamic, I found, and I found that very effective in the story.
Well, it's interesting that there's, you know, in it says, I'm going to take you to the next level, and it takes them to like the DC universe, and it's where you can suffer, and that's where it's so. There's a world where there is slight pain but regeneration, and we're going to take you to this world where there is pain and suffering, and you are going to get hurt, and it's that idea that okay, so there are levels to this, then there are tiers through this, and I'm not going to. There's an issue later on down the line that has a full page splash panel, and I won't spoil its context because I want you to learn it. But it's Animal Man. All it is Animal Man, sort of like head and shoulders, and he looks out at us. He's looking out from the panel. He just says, "My God, I can see you." Right. And it's that thing of you start to think like, wait a minute, if that was level 2, you know, if DC Universe is level 2, are we a level in this? Right. You know, like, are we a level like 5, 6, 7, whatever? Yeah. And again, like in Multiversity, later on, he revisits that with the idea of different, not just different universes, but different realities and stuff on top of each other. Yeah, so, cool. It's a great run. This is a fantastic run. I think, you know, gets overshadowed by some of his other works that are still magnificent, but like, you know, Doom Patrol. And the Invisibles get talked about so much, but his Animal Man run is where he sort of learnt to walk and run, I think. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, like, we've had Grant Morrison related books mentioned a couple of times now, so I do know he's one of the big heavy hitters as far as writers go. So, like I said, I was impressed with this. It was a really good choice and a very good choice, a very good collection, Scott, in general, to take with you to Isla Ra or a desert island. So. No, thank you very much for selecting those 4. No, I'm glad you enjoyed them, because it's a difficult choice, and it wasn't just the books that I would take, but I didn't want to throw something in that would be, like I say, a hard slog from like 1964 or something like that. So. It's well chosen, and Loonies, as mentioned, these will be on links to them. In the episode summary for you, so just click on them if you haven't already, and pick yourself up a copy. Definitely try out this Animal Man. I think it's really good, very interesting, and I can see Grant Morrison's talent in this. So very good, Scott. I think we'll have to wrap up now, but thank you so much for coming onto the show. It's been a blast. We've been through. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. For having me. No worries. It's always fun to talk to people that, I think, as you said it near towards the beginning, people that are really interested in their stuff. You know, like these 4 books are very treasured for you. They've been eye openers for me, and I hope Loonies out there are going to try them out, and they may become fans of, you know, Animal Man or Poyo. It's all very good. But thank you so much. We are out here in the desert, but before we wrap up, I just want to say there'll also be a link for 20th Century Geek on our episode summary. So check that out, Scott's podcast. And you can contact us on itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We have a Facebook page and group, facebook.com/itkmoonnight, or the group, facebook.com/group/itkmoonnight. On Twitter as well, where I've been chatting with Scott at itkmoonnight. Also on Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Just search for Into the Night and Moon Knight podcast. Also on all sorts of podcast catches. So whatever is your poison, just
just look us up there, and hopefully we're there. We should be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all that sort of jazz. So, yeah, check us out. Scott, thank you again. This is Beyond a Scott. He is a cosmic entity. He has, you have your own level to go to, Scott. Scott,
I do, yeah. I have to go reach my own level now.
So, actually, Scott, I was going to ask you to ascend into the skies, but I do hear a truck coming by. How about we hitch a ride on that truck and make our way back?
I think that's it sounds like a safe bet. Let's take the truck.
Excellent. Okay, well, Scott, can I... Do you know our sign-off? By any chance?
No, I probably do, but it slipped my mind at the moment.
No worries. May Conchu watch over the denizens of the night. Excellent. Well, we'll catch you later, Loonies. Thanks again, Scott. And, we'll see you later.
Thanks very much.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.